Okay, this is the Sutton Finance and Warrant Advisory Committee. This is September 26th at 6:30 p.m. And we'll start the meeting tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So tonight, on the agenda, we'll have a brief update by Town Administrator Jim Smith. We have the public hearing to go through the warrant for the October 16th town meeting. And after the close of the hearing, we can discuss, our recommendations, but also then we'll also have the annual election of officers for this committee. So, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few updates for the board, and then we can get into the warrant. The first is new growth was certified by Department of Revenue at a $459,000 and a few dollars change. We budgeted $150,000 in new growth, so it's a net of roughly $309,000 difference in new growth. That's a good story. And what our plan is spend it on one-time costs, so we have the money available in the FY19 budget, which is our standard of what we've done in the past few years. So you'll see in the articles, the article number 1, and we're budgeting 14,220, or I'm sorry, 15,612 to make up for the cherry sheet differences, and I'll explain that when we get there. Mm-hmm. And the other article is article number 3, is we're appropriating monies to essentially reduce the free cash appropriation and replace that number with new growth. So the net number of the 300, I think it's 275, give or take. We're going to put that in lieu of free cash. So our free cash number in end of FY18 will go up by that net number, roughly the $275,000.
Yep. So
it's a little confusing, but that's essentially what our plan is with new growth. As far as free cash, it was certified within a 4-day period of time, and a lot of credit goes to Tim and the assessors. That number is $1,329,000 and some change. So that is a big number. Keep in mind we carried forward roughly $300,000 from last fiscal year. So we didn't spend all our free cash last year. We carried forward $300,000, and that's the trend we'd like to continue going forward. Mm-hmm. Don't spend all our free cash, carry forward, so we know that we have some free cash automatically prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. Obviously the makeup of that 1.329 million comes from a number of different sources. The largest source is local receipts. We had $622,000 over what we budgeted in local receipts. The largest number within local receipts that was over was motor vehicle excise tax, which came in at close to $200,000 over what we budgeted. And there are a number of other. We sold a lot of equipment, as we've done in the past few years. We currently are going out on municipal in the month of October, selling some excess vehicles, excess equipment, both school and town. That brought in $70,000 last year. Those are some of the big numbers. Inspectional services, $72,000. You've got a bunch of $70,000s down there. So the big numbers are carrying over $300,000 from the previous fiscal year. Local receipts up significantly, in large part due to motor vehicle excise tax. Mm-hmm. The other big number I guess we should address is the tax revenues that came in excess of budget, which was $172,000. And credit goes to the treasurer collector for really going after those taxpayers and making sure that they paid. And the last factor is we didn't spend all the money that was appropriated last year. We had $230,000 of unexpended funds within our budget. So, looking forward to FY19, there are some lessons here. We're really looking at the local receipts number, seeing if we can bump that up a little bit. I'm not expecting $1.3 million in free cash. It's good, but we want to make sure we're, using every opportunity to raise revenues for the annual operating budget, because that's always the biggest strain within our financial process, is the annual operating budget.
Right.
So we can talk about more of that later at another time, maybe, but that's all I have for updates at this point.
Okay, great, thank you. Just before we open the public hearing, I was remiss in not welcoming Sue Rothermick to the committee. So welcome. And I know there's a list of things that the first-year people get to do, so we'll pass that around.
Yeah. Car washes at 9 in the morning.
So, welcome. It is 6:37, and we will declare the public hearing open. I think the most efficient way to do this is, Jim, if you can go through that, if the committee can ask questions, and when we're done with that, we'll open it up to the public for any comments, questions,
Okay.
anything like that.
The first 9 articles are sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, so I'll speak on those. And probably Article 10, which is the sewer commissioners, and then I'll let Jen Hager take over for the planning articles that are on and then the library can address their particular article, which is the last article on the warrant.
Fine, okay.
Article number 1, to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken during the May town meeting by adjusting the line items as follows. Bottom line is we budget the net of state aid. That number came in minus $1,392. I committed to the school department the full Chapter 70 number, which came in at $30 per student versus the governor's $20 per student. That's an additional $14,220. So to get that number, with the decrease in state aid, the net state aid number, I need to raise and appropriate an additional $15,612. That's all new growth number that's going to be funding that article.
Okay.
But that holds our commitment true to the school department, fully funding their Chapter 70 as the state government requested. Article number 2 is to vote to transfer from overlay surplus in the amount of $50,000 and appropriate to the FY18 OPEB expense budget. This is part of our funding policy that was presented to this committee as well as to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen adopted this policy, and this policy says that anytime that we close out the fiscal year, we can go back and look at the overlay surplus. If it exceeds $50,000, I don't know what the exact language is, we can appropriate that towards OPEB. Right now, we have a surplus of overlay, probably a couple $100,000, but we're modestly appropriating $50,000 into the OPEB trust fund account. That account right now stands as of today, because we had a meeting, at 900.
It's about 920,000, 947, 947,000.
Yeah. So, and obviously with this transfer in, it'll be close to $1 million. So, that's important. There's a number of situations going on that we can address at another time, with GASB 75 coming out. And we're looking forward to the rating agency Standard & Poor's is coming into town for a visit on October 17th, and that's one factor that they will consider in their rating. So it's important that we address that issue.
Don, are we standing in good stead with this compared to other towns?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we asked that question amongst the trust fund committee. We did a little survey between local governments in the surrounding area, and we found that we were doing more than most. I can't speak to the entire state. There are 351 give or take towns, plus regional districts and everything else that make up our local governments and that have OPEB liabilities. So, there's no clearinghouse that says where you rank, what's the strategy, how much you're funding towards OPEB. Our challenge right now, we got an aggressive funding policy. We fund automatically $105,000, $100,000 from the general fund, $5,000 from the sewer enterprise account. We've also committed as part of that funding policy for all revenue that comes from the cell tower at Town Farm Road to go into that OPEB fund. That was part of that policy, you may recall. And then, obviously, additional overlay surplus will be an additional addition to the OPEB account. So,
Do you know where we stand with the liability itself?
yeah, we do. Do you
19 million?
Well, in accordance with GASB 45, it's about 17 million.
17.
It's going to go up a lot more than that on the
Right.
GASB 75.
Right.
And I can't talk really about that number because it's so big. The one thing I know is I've been at a lot of presentations, and I've been to situations where communities their budget is half of what their OPEB liability is. The positive for Sutton is our OPEB liability is half of what our budget is. So we're on the better part of that. I still want to reduce that liability through plan design changes and other changes, but it's a challenge every year.
Yeah. And when was the valuation done, the most recent one?
We just got it about a week ago.
Oh,
But it's an
okay.
interim. It wasn't a full valuation.
Right.
So it was just an update. And then next year we have a full one, and it'll be under the new GASB standards.
Okay. Good.
So that's that article. Article number 3, to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken on Maytown meeting to reflect the final tax levy limit. That's the additional new growth, the roughly $275,000 in new growth. And our plan is to, instead of using free cash for the capital fund, we're going to replace $275,000 of that free cash with new growth. And obviously, the free cash will accumulate as of FY18, the end of this fiscal year. Article number 4 is our bad bills that we have. There are 2 of them. One is $107 to WB Mason for supplies. The other one is $2,557 for Medicare processing. This bill apparently got lost in the shuffle over at the school department. They sent it over to us about 2 weeks ago. Obviously, it was prior to the end of the fiscal year. The bill was owed for, so we are obviously have to go through this process to pay that bill. That comes out of data processing costs. Article number 5, to see if the town will accept Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, to establish a commission on disability. We've sent out a request via cable and the various other media to look for volunteers that would be interested in serving on this Commission on Disability. This commission, once it's in place, would work on some sort of transition plan, bringing us where we are now to as close as we can to be fully compliant with the ADA regulations, Americans with Disabilities Act. I've been asked to form this committee by surrounding managers and others, and I thought now was the time to get it done. We've had some issues with 8-lot school as far as accessibility and so forth. We had to go to a meeting in Boston before the Architectural Access Board. I think getting a committee in place that can address these issues before we actually move forward with some rehab would be a positive move for the town.
Jim, will this committee have to be trained?
Yes, there is a training process. I think it's either a webinar or a session that they go through. Otherwise, what we're looking for is, some advocates, but also some people with disabilities to serve on this committee that have a unique sense of what it's like to be disabled in a community with, very few sidewalks, and their ability to get in and out of municipal buildings in particular. So I don't know what the full extent of it will be, but this group will clearly provide some insight to me and to the rest of the town, and as we're making decisions moving forward.
Because I know the state's moving forward on a lot of these committees, asking them to be registered with the state, which means a fee.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, to be honest.
Yeah, they're doing it with counselors right now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not aware. I had a disability commission in Fall River at my previous job, and I don't recall of any fee. I think
I'm
the
all
committee
for it. I'm
the
just
committee
saying.
met, and we had individuals in wheelchairs, and we just went through the town and got their experiences, and that was helpful.
Good.
Article number 6, to see, what is this? To see if the town will accept provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23D, relative to a board or committee member voting on issues wherein they have missed a single meeting but have filed an affidavit and examination of evidence and viewing as to not to be disqualified for voting on a particular matter. This came up. We were asking whether the new member of the Conservation Commission could vote on the police station that was before them. We did a little research and come to find out we never accepted the Mass General Law that authorizes the person to vote on that particular matter, even though they missed the first hearing, step in that hearing. So, it's a long story. Come to find out, he wasn't even on the commission when the hearing started, so he couldn't vote anyway. But this is an important thing to have in place in case somebody from the zoning board or planning board misses one meeting. They can just view the meeting online and then sign an affidavit, and they can vote on that particular matter.
Okay.
Sort of a housekeeping issue. Article number 7, to see if the town will vote to amend the home rule charter for the town. Vote pursuant to section 3.2B of the home rule charter. This essentially allows a member from the Board of Selectmen to sit on the library building committee. That's essentially what this article is all about. What we typically do is I serve on any building committee. Tim Harrison serves on any building committee, and a member of the Board of Selectmen I like to have sitting on a building committee. Ken Stewart sat on the middle school, high school. Jesse Lemanik sitting on the police station, and the library would need a building committee member as well. Article number 8. This is a piece of town-owned property at 25R Putnam Hill Road. This is the site of the old septic system for the high school across the street. It's been obviously surplused. The school department no longer has a need for it. They have a treatment facility at the rear of their location. And the property is available. One or two of the abutters have expressed interest in acquiring this property. There's no value to the town sitting vacant. I would like to put it on the tax rolls and get a little bit of taxes for it. But the process is any town-owned property, you need to get town meeting to authorize the sale of that property. It's not like a typical tax title foreclosure where you can just have an auction and surplus the property to the highest bidder.
The school department or school committee does not have to approve this as well?
I believe they voted to surplus it. They voted for the next article to surplus. This is 126 Mendon Road. This piece of property is located at the corner of Mendon and Medbury, right off of Putnam Hill Road. So you going south on Putnam Hill Road, you go past the proposed police station site on your left. Go to the next intersection, that's Mendon Road and Putnam Hill Road. You go down a little bit on Mendon Road, there's Medbury Road that intersects Putnam Hill and Mendon.
Okay.
It's at that corner intersection. This particular parcel was donated by Ruth Putnam in the 1920s exclusively for school purposes. Now, back in those days, a half-acre lot was a large piece of property and could be used for a school. Obviously, we, have a school complex that, thanks to the Devagians, and we're all set with school property. But the process is, we need to get the school committee to say that they no longer need this land, surplus this property. Town meeting needs to vote to authorize the sale of it. And then there's another process that we need to go through in addition, because the property was dedicated or donated to the town exclusively for school purposes. So there's, I don't know what it's called, Cypress petition. One of you attorneys can figure that out. But, I have legal staff helping me with this process. One of the abutters, Ed Newell, I think is his name, would like to purchase this property to extend his property out to the road. So it's right now it's sitting vacant and full of leaves from the abutters just dumping leaves on that property. So there is a process we need to go through, and we might have to do an RFP to sell this particular parcel, even to this one individual that may be the only individual interested in purchasing it.
Okay.
So, any questions on that one? I know it's a little confusing, but
Curious, are there any other property that the school has that is not in the, the area, the direct, where the school district is now?
not that I'm aware of, but I'm open if anybody wants to present one, if there's one out there. I mean, we generally work closely as a group of departments, the assessors, Nick Nunemacher. I mean, we're always on any parcel that we own that we currently don't have an active use for, surplusing it and getting it back on the tax rolls. And, no, we're not very good landlords or overseers of property. Much better if you get an abutter purchasing it, more oversight and tax revenue for the town. So,
Okay.
it's a good question. Article number 10 is sponsored by the Sewer Commission. I don't know that anybody from the Sewer Commission is here, but I'll speak on it. This is to waive the connection fee for $5,000 to the American Legion Dudley Genren Post. We have a policy of sorts of waiving fees for nonprofits. This is obviously a veterans organization. They are a great partner in the town. They do a lot of things for the town of Sutton, fundraisers, et cetera. Manchog Water, we waive the connection fee, and all waivers of the connection fee have to go to town meeting. Because it is part of our existing bylaws. The senior center, Manchog Fire Station, all received waivers from the connection fee. But this is a request of the sewer commissioners, supported by the Board of Selectmen.
Have there been any nonprofits where the fee has not been waived?
I don't know.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. There may be.
Yeah.
So those are the town articles, Board of Selectmen articles. Any questions on those articles before I have Jen come up? Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
I get actually on Article 7, so is that a general home rule? So that anytime we have, future building committees, we'd have to do that? Or can we just vote once to say, accept this rule so that the Board of Selectmen know they'll always have a member on?
Yeah, I misspoke. It's not, I just misread the article. It's not a home rule petition. It's a request by town meeting to authorize one member of the Board of Selectmen to sit on this committee. It's not a bad idea to have a general bylaw that authorizes one member of the Board of Selectmen to sit on any building committee going forward. It's, hopefully that we're done with building properties. or close to it. Obviously, the library is the next potential project, so.
One quick question on Article 6. It seems like this was for a very specific situation, but does this address any other concerns of attendance or issues with other boards or committees within the town?
No, but it is nice to have it there. I'm assuming the Finance Committee could even use this, that, if you miss one of the public hearings maybe in March, where you watch it on the cable show or whatever, television, you sign an affidavit, you could probably vote at the end of the public hearing, assuming you just missed one hearing. And it's more appropriate for like the planning and zoning when they have a particular issue before them, and they miss one of 3 days of hearings, they can still vote on that.
Is there, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, but what happens if there's more than one on a committee, on, let's say, a 5-person committee, and 3 of them aren't there? Does this establish a quorum?
No, it wouldn't affect the quorum rules.
Okay.
Because you can't have a public meeting without a quorum. So, assuming you have at least a quorum, 3 members on a 5-member board, the other 2 could follow this procedure.
Okay.
And be able to vote 5 on the final vote.
Right. Okay.
All set?
Yep, thank you. And Jen, who's gonna do it?
All right. Articles 11, 12, 13, and 14 are the articles that I'm going to go over. So might as well jump in with the tougher of the two. Articles 11 and 12 are identical articles for the most part. The only difference between the two is one is adopting a zoning bylaw and one is adopting a general bylaw. Zoning bylaw, as you know, when you adopt one, that grandfathers anything that comes before. A general bylaw eliminates grandfathering claims. As we don't have any recreational or medical marijuana facilities in the town of Sutton to date, we don't necessarily need the general bylaw change, but town council recommends we just do both of them anyways, because even though the legislation has much improved in its latest round, it's still not great. So, so Article 11 is the zoning bylaw adoption. Article 12 is the general bylaw adoption. And in May, there was a ballot vote. I have given you a copy of the question 4 election returns. So that was the statewide vote to allow recreational marijuana, in which Sutton voted in the majority not to allow recreational marijuana. However, it passed at a statewide level regardless. And then you have the May 23rd, 2017 vote, which was to ban all forms of recreational marijuana within the town. And as you can see, 8% of those eligible to vote voted yes to ban all forms of recreational marijuana. 5% of those eligible to vote voted no to not ban all forms of recreational marijuana, and 87% of registered voters didn't vote at that election. So I wanted you to have the numbers before we talked about this. All right, so the reason we were bringing these articles originally is because the old version of the law that existed before August of this year said if you wanted to prohibit any or all forms of recreational marijuana, that would be retailers, product manufacturers, or cultivators, or testing labs, all recreational. If you wanted to prohibit any or all, you had to have a vote and you had to have your bylaws. So there was a vote and we were following up with our bylaws. No point in putting forward the bylaws if the vote doesn't pass. The law changed. The new law says you don't need the vote. So it's nice you took the vote, and the vote did happen, and you have the results, but the vote is not legally germane anymore with the new law. But you do need these bylaw changes. So, thus, in accordance with the law, as you guys know, we had the planning board hearing on the zoning bylaw. It's not, the planning board's not in charge of the general bylaw, no hearings required. So we didn't have a hearing specifically on the general bylaw. Obviously, it's the same article, so I guess we kind of did have a hearing on that as well. And there was a lot of discussion, and you can see in this memorandum that the vote to recommend a prohibition of all types of recreational marijuana establishments was 3-2. And the three members of the board that vote in favor of the prohibition felt that because the spring 2017 ballot question showed a majority of those who voted supported prohibition, that the board should stay the course and recommend a consistent action to prohibit all forms of recreational marijuana establishments in Sutton. So they just wanted to stay consistent, even though the vote legally has no bearing. It still took place, so three of the members said, let's just keep going. There's going to, because of this vote, there may be some discussion on town meeting floor, and wherever it goes, but let's keep going with our recommendation. Let's be consistent. Two dissenting members felt a full prohibition, including recreational marijuana cultivators, marijuana testing facilities, marijuana product manufacturers, and marijuana retailers, may be short-sighted, as there is at least one well-regarded cultivator seriously interested in locating in Sutton, and as these uses can be significant revenue generators, something less than a full prohibition should be considered. So that's where the other two members stood. So that was the result of that. Obviously, they don't give a legal recommendation on 12, but I'm sure it would be.
But they're letting 8% of the voters, or people that voted, tell them how to vote
Yeah,
themselves.
I mean, the planning board didn't have these numbers last night. So they didn't see that only 13% of registered voters in Sutton even showed up at the May election. So they didn't have these numbers. So, they were not aware that the turnout at that election was very, very low, and that frankly, the difference between those voting in favor of full prohibition and those voting against prohibition was 3% difference. They didn't know that. Yeah. So this is what will go to town meeting for the planning board recommendation. I assume there'll be some discussion on the floor. One of the other questions the planning board member asked of town council is, if we prohibit this, if times change, if circumstances change, what's the process to go back? And council said it's a bylaw change. So if you vote a bylaw today to only allow 10-foot high houses, tomorrow or next election, town meeting, you can change it to 20-foot high houses. So they're bylaw changes. So they are flexible over time and can be changed with subsequent articles. So that's where this one stands. I wouldn't be surprised if there's discussion on the town meeting floor, because we rarely have a split vote like this on the planning board. It's pretty different.
But in addition to, what we're stating here, there were also significant restrictions to the geographical area that such establishments could be.
Well, recreational being different than medical. Here we go again. So
right,
medical.
It had to be within the medical area. We voted for the medical area.
Right, recreational, you would have to establish a bylaw and then decide where that can go. So right now, unless you define an area for recreational can go anywhere where you would normally retail and be industrial. So we've only regulated medical. If we allow recreational, you have to write a bylaw for how you're going to then regulate that. And the bylaw will be smaller or larger, depending on what types of uses you allow. Because you can pick and choose. You can say, we don't want retail, but we're good with cultivation. We don't want cultivation, but we're okay with testing. So you can pick and choose if you chose to go that way. And then you have to write a bylaw that regulates places, just like we did with medical, this use, this recreational marijuana use. The caveat I think we talked about a little bit when we were talking about medical is, if you allow some medical somewhere, you automatically allow recreational there if you don't prohibit recreational. So if you don't allow retailing, but you allow cultivation, it's automatically allowed where medical is allowed, but you may choose to allow it in other places as well.
Okay.
Okay?
So the vote that was taken has no effect at this point.
It happened, you've got the results, but legally it doesn't have any force because of the change to the law that occurred in August, yeah. It's just these bylaw votes that count, legally.
And
Correct.
what happens, so if this is, let me make sure I got my double negatives straight. If this is allowed, let's just say,
The prohibition?
no, that's where I got my double negatives mixed up.
If we do nothing.
If we do nothing, which means that recreational marijuana uses are not prohibited.
Okay.
Tell me, can you go through the restrictions on that one more time, just,
Well, first off, you
Because
did
to-
something
to-
smart in the spring by enacting a temporary moratorium on
Till next
recreational marijuana.
October, yeah.
So you're safe. You're safe until Halloween next year, okay? So there's your other option. Your other option is, man, this is still a mess. Maybe we need to talk about this in a larger, wider, more well-publicized forum. There's a lot to think about here. You can recommend passing over it. You have spring town meeting. Probably shouldn't push it much past that, but you do have fall town meeting. We put it until Halloween because we knew next fall's town meeting would take place right before that. That's pretty last minute, but you do have at least a really good time period before spring town meeting. If it's something you feel there should be more input on.
but if there was a use that came up, and this was approved, so that there was a prohibition in effect, for that,
That's what takes precedent.
for that use that would come up, someone looking for approval, that would have to be a bylaw change.
Yeah, if you prohibited all forms of recreational marijuana at this town meeting, and somebody wanted to do it, they have to go to town meeting and get that changed.
So if we don't, if this, again, doesn't, if the prohibition does not take effect, and that same entity wants to come in and do whatever they're gonna do, what's the process there? What are the restrictions at that point?
This
Is
is-
this a blank check kind of thing?
You just hit the one gray area. You still have a temporary moratorium in place.
Until October.
Let's say it's November of 2000 and,
Then they're
Well,
allowed.
then we'd have to. put
then they're allowed.
If you haven't prohibited them, then they can go wherever similar uses would be allowed within your community.
And there's no other approval that they've got to,
Well,
that
I mean,
they gotta
site
go
plan
through.
review.
Plan-
Whatever,
right.
like, so if it's a retailer, they could go wherever retail's allowed, they'd have to follow that process, so they'd have to go through site plan review but yeah, we don't intend to be caught in that situation, but the question is, where do you wanna go? Between where you are now, which is you can't prohibit medical, so you've established a location and regs for medical, and you have a proposed article to prohibit all forms of recreational. You want to just go with that, and if somebody wants to come in and change it, they can do that and make their argument. Do you want to go, let's pass over this, let's do some work between now and the next town meeting or the fall town meeting, and then go forward? Or do you want to say, hey, you know what, let's amend this on the floor, let's allow this and this, but not this? Those are the three different directions we
But
can
the
go as a town.
passing over the article happens on the floor, not here.
Right, yeah, well, I don't know how your recommendations happen. Can you recommend that town meeting pass over?
recommend that, did
No, they did not, and the hearing's closed, so.
Right.
And the only vote on these two articles will be at town meeting. This won't be a special, vote held within town or anything like that. So
No.
for people all are fans that are watching on TV.
Town meeting.
The town meeting is your only opportunity to speak to and to vote yea or nay in regard to prohibiting any recreational marijuana use in town. So.
Any or all, yep. Right now, it's all. That's what the article says right now.
Okay.
So we had that law change in August. Is there any anticipation of with the commission now making any other recommendations that could put another, twist or
All the
curveball
time.
into this.
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
This is always in flux. We thought things would be left with the Department of Public Health because they've done a really good job with medical. Not only is recreational not going into the hands of the Department of Public Health, by December of 2018, medical and recreational go into the hands of the Cannabis Control Commission. That doesn't exist yet. So, well, you have your members, but not much is happening. So yeah, things are always in flux. This is a complicated issue. I don't know if it would raise to the level of law changes, though there's definitely all of this going on out there, lots of chatter. But the Cannabis Control Commission is going to promulgate regulations, and what they promulgate could certainly affect. And their deadlines again for that aren't until next year. 2 weeks before they have to accept their first application. So,
Do you know where the neighboring communities stand on this?
I have a map. It's a blurry map. Oh, actually, I have the map on question 4. I don't have the map on, I can tell you anecdotally. This was the map on question 4 to legalize recreational marijuana. That's us, the red dot. So this was the original article to allow recreational marijuana. So the reds are no's, the blues were yeses. In terms of allowing recreational uses locally, I'm actually on a subcommittee in the Blackstone Valley, and with Northbridge, Grafton, Millbury, Uxbridge, and Douglas haven't showed up. So on all committees, their boards don't have a very strong position right now. They're really just gathering information because the new law just passed. The indication anecdotally is that, there's not a strong wave of, as you can see from the original question, in those communities, there's not a strong wave of no, 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 but there's definitely, we want to understand this better and do some public outreach and see where everybody's coming from.
Does any other community have a moratorium that,
Almost,
that
yeah.
all of them do?
All of them
Okay.
in the area have moratoriums, yeah. The original version of the law was just dicey, as I've expressed to you before, so everybody, a lot of people just were like, whoa, we need to push the hold button. So yeah, a lot of communities in our area, most of them have moratoriums.
And if we don't pass this now, if it doesn't pass through the town vote, and that moratorium expires, what happens? Can we pass this later, and then we're just at risk of somebody establishing
You can
in
establish
that
it
window?
at any time after December 31st, I think it is, of 2019. If you haven't done anything and you want to do a prohibition, then that ballot vote kicks back in. Then you've lost then you have to do a ballot vote and bylaw changes after 2019, just to make things weird.
What do our police think of this? Do they have an opinion?
I don't even want to paraphrase. So, they have not expressed any particular opinion other than not being overly happy with the initial statewide vote to allow recreational marijuana.
I mean, it seems to me it would be more conservative to prohibit it now and then add it back if we... And to...
You guys have the say in the vote. So. Okay,
Okay.
so there's those two.
So on Article 12, the planning board has no recommendation
Right, because it's a
because it's
general
not under
bylaw.
their purview.
Okay, Article 13 is signage. We don't technically allow municipal signs right now. So you're gonna have to pull down the one in front of the town hall. So that came up in reviewing the police station plan. Had a very nice potential sign design, 20 square feet, looked very similar to the one right across on Putnam Hill Road at the insurance agent. Looked at the bylaws and you can't really do that. So we're fixing the regs to allow municipal facility signs up to 20 square feet. So it's kind of housekeeping, kind of not. Article 14 was recommended by, or requested by the building department. So you can see, I call this a housekeeping article. The process to alter a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot. So you have a lot that's less, in the rural residential, you need 80,000 square feet. Say you've got a lot that's only an acre. It's it's an older lot. And it's got a house in it that's in the setbacks, sitting in the side setback. That is a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot. Our bylaws already tell you how you can alter that structure, but they don't tell you overtly. They just say any non-conforming structure can be altered by this process. The building department has already gotten some pushback by the crafty attorneys out there in the world that doesn't include non-conforming structures on non-conforming lots. So they just said, can you please just add this sentence. A non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot may be altered in accordance with this prior section. So we said, sure. And then town council looked at it and said, I know you want to bang your head, but just change that front wording and say an otherwise conforming structure in the first part, and then this sentence we're adding refers to non-conforming structures. So the first part of the thing is the house on the non-conforming lot that's otherwise conforming. It's not in the setbacks. It's not too high. It's perfect other than the fact that it's sitting on a lot. The second sentence deals with all the other structures. It's wordy. It's a good point. It's housekeeping more than anything.
So the otherwise section is not in the article?
The planning board recommended, because town council recommends this, their recommendation was to recommend that town meeting approve this article with that wording. So
Okay,
because
so it'll be
the
amended
warrant
at town
hasn't been
meeting?
signed yet, we're gonna put it in this form.
Oh.
Unless you say otherwise.
Okay.
And I didn't plan that.
So that can go on the warrant?
As you
It won't
see
have to be
here.
amended at?
Right.
Okay,
Try to avoid that at all costs.
okay,
That's it.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Article 15? Welcome.
So I apologize, we're a little divided tonight because we had scheduled an information session for 7 o'clock a while ago, and then we found out this was happening now. So half of us are downstairs.
Okay.
And I'm here with Neil Joyce, who's our owner's project manager, as well as for the police station. So we thank him for being here very much. There's been a lot of discussion about this article and the proposal, so I thought the easiest thing, if it's all right with you, is to start with a statement that's a little lengthy, but I think it will cover so much of what people maybe have read and seen that hopefully then it will help to expedite and
Just
organize.
Just for the people at home that don't have this in front of us, I'd like to at least go through what the article says
Sure.
and what we're talking about and what
course.
we'll vote on. So, the article is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $11,190,000, $190,985 to fund the construction, renovation, expansion of the Sutton Public Library. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're talking about now. The $11,190,985 is the gross number.
That's correct, that is the gross number.
There's a state grant that, combined with a green library grant, would come to, my notes say $5.15 million.
That's correct.
So the net to the town will be $6,040,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So, why are the trustees here? According to the master plan, which was finalized in 2012, a new library facility is a priority for the town, along with the police station and the DPW facility. The need for improved library facilities was identified as a key issue in Section 1.3 of the master plan and a priority action in Section 1.4. In addition, the recommendation was made that all 3 facilities pursue grants to offset their cost, and the library is the only facility to accomplish this task. And quoting from the master plan, "The library needs additional space as it is so small that there are issues meeting state standards for purchase of new materials, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, additionally space at the town hall must be utilized for many programs, and the programs are limited as a result of scheduling within this building." So that's the master plan document. That's not something the library wrote. The master plan highlighted the need for additional community meeting space and recreational programs. The library is the main source for non-sports recreation for all ages in the town, providing educational lectures, concerts, music and movement programs, STEAM learning opportunities, early literacy programs, programs for teens. The new library has been designed to allow multiple programs at once and offer a meeting space that can be open to the community without the need for opening and staffing the library. This large community room can also serve as a safe, accessible polling place rather than disrupting the safety and educational activities at the schools. When the community meets in a school facility, some staff must be available at a cost to the town or the end user, if the use is allowed at all. Of course, nothing can be scheduled when school is in session. The school building use policy is available at suttonschools.net. There are many requirements that might be difficult for some groups to meet, especially a hefty certificate of liability for insurance of over $1 million. Regarding implementation, the master plan indicated that the library planning and design process should begin with the design grant application in 2013, and it was shown in the implementation matrix in the master plan. The planning and design grant was awarded with matching funds provided from library retained state aid and interest from a trust fund. The construction grant application was submitted in January 2017. All planning, design, and grant submission activities were completed with no costs incurred by the town. It is unfortunate that the police station and library projects are now back-to-back. The police station was also set to commence design in 2013 according to the master plan. But design was delayed until the end of 2016 and then ready for spring 2017 town meeting. As early as spring 2016, the library director and trustees had advised the board and town administrator that we expected to submit a warrant for fall 2017. As a side note, we've been hearing, why don't you use the police station quite a bit? The library could not possibly have developed a plan to utilize the police station space when our design process began almost 3 years before the police station began their process. Selectman Lemanik stated that proceeding with this project would jeopardize critical town services due to the second clause of the compliance assurance agreement requirement the building remain a public library. The second clause of the agreement does call for the building to remain a public library for at least 20 years. Mr. Lemanik should have noticed that public library is not capitalized and not a defined term within the agreement. The second clause is silent as to the level of municipal support. The third clause does state that the library must qualify for state aid only until the final grant payment is made, which is the first year that the facility is open. After the first year, the new library is completed. It could be open 1 day per week with volunteers if the town budget was in such awful shape. Frankly, given that the library would still be less than 1% of the town's operating budget, it would be unreasonable to assume that all the money would go there first. The intent of the clause is to ensure that the building funded with a $5.1 million grant by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners is not turned over to some other municipal or non-library use in that 20-year window. In no way does this prioritize the library's funding over any other town department, but protects the MBLC's investment, as well as that of the voters in Sutton who voted in favor of the development of a library. And this brings to mind the town's investment in Shaw Farm itself. The town purchased Shaw Farm for $4.5 million in 2007 after a town meeting vote. At the time of purchase, it was to be used for a variety of municipal needs. After eliminating multiple sites, the library planning and design team made careful considerations when placing the library on the Shaw Farm site to not impact any other current or planned uses for the Shaw Farm property. All development is beyond the 100-foot wetland setbacks and outside the 100-foot envelope of the potential vernal pools. The critical terrestrial habitat is 750 feet from the edge of a vernal pool, which doesn't really mean a lot until you realize that that's over 40 acres. The recommendation from the Army Corps of Engineers and other environmental community stakeholders like the EPA, et cetera, is to limit development to less than 25% of that area. The library will use approximately 2.5 acres of over 130 acres included in the property. Regarding the development of Shaw Lane, the engineering firm GDD reviewed site conditions along with the prior Shaw master plan, and there was a wetlands resource map done in 2013 as well, and adequate costs are included in the budget for the development of Shaw Lane. For any project to proceed at Shaw, these expenses must be faced. As we mentioned before, the overall budget is $11,190,985. The grant, including green incentive, is $5,153,000. This budget includes the building, parking lot, paving, running the utilities, the septic, the well, the furniture, the fixtures, equipment, and widening Shaw Lane. The average tax impact is 31 cents per thousand assessed value, about $9 per month for an average residence in town. Should the project proceed, the capital campaign will continue to fundraise. As of today, the campaign is approaching $50,000. We're at 48, and selling bricks. The library also intends to apply for further grants for various aspects of the project, such as the public use computers. The budget also includes over $1.6 million to cover cost escalation for 3 years, and $600,000 in additional contingencies. I encourage you to think again about the cost escalation for 3 years. It's $1.6 million. How much more will this project cost in 10 years? And we don't know if there will still be grants. There's nothing on the MBLC website regarding a future grant round. From an operational budget perspective, the library's current operational budget is approximately $208,000, with an anticipated $50,000 increase to cover utilities and maintenance. And I just learned today there would be about $6,000 for insurance. So let's even be generous and say $60,000. Most of the library budget goes to salary and wages, which is about $155,000, with the remainder for CW Mars fees, materials purchasing, subscriptions, and supplies. The library also pursues grants each year and receives about $10,000 in state aid. The building has been designed to run with the current staffing levels. Currently, the library must remove an item for every item that comes into the library. The library's collection will be allowed to grow utilizing the current materials budget. We will simply stop removing items from the collection. All this represents less than 1% of the town's overall operating budget, with which we provide services to over 1,000 unique households in this town, 200 items per day, every day we're open, 6 days per week. The value of the items circulated last year was greater than $1,042,000 if everyone had to purchase the items instead of borrowing them from the library. In translation, households who use the library save about an average of $1,000 a year, and New Year's are always welcome. We don't run out. The last point of concern we'd like to address is Sutton's bond rating. Selectman Lemanik felt that this debt exclusion could possibly be the straw that broke our bond rating from AA to A. He likened a bond rating to an individual credit score, but bond ratings are much more complicated than just debt load, income, and payment history. A bond rating has many elements that are analyzed by the rating agencies prior to a final rating. The town administrator actually just stated it again, that Standard & Poor's would be coming in to evaluate Sutton. And I found an excellent presentation on their methodology on the Mass CTA School website. There are 7 factors in a municipal bond rating, and they are weighted differently. 30% economy, 20% management, and then 10% each of framework, liquidity, budgetary performance, budgetary flexibility, and finally debt and contingent liabilities. It seems a far greater percentage of the score is related to how diverse the employers are, revenue stream trends, operational budget management, capital stabilization funds, OPEB funds, the master plan, and the capital plan. This rating has much more to do with how well our town administrator and town accountant do their jobs and the growth and economy of Sutton than any one new bond measure. As trustees and citizens of Sutton, we would appreciate clarification from this committee regarding this concern. Thank you for your time and efforts to understand the issues that come before this committee. Thank you. I know that was a lot, but there's been so much said in various forums that I felt I needed a few minutes to address it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of
Thank you.
questions, I'm sure.
And thank you also for all the work that's been put in over the years to get it to this point and to get the grant approval, and congratulations on that. So,
Thank you.
one of the things that Selectman Lemanik, and you touched on tonight, is talked about last week were some unanticipated environmental issues. And you talked about it, and I don't know whether or not, I don't know the first thing about the environmental issues that may or may not be there, but let's assume that there are, that are unanticipated. How would those costs be addressed?
So we do have $600,000 in contingency in that grant amount that we're putting forward in the warrant article. I don't anticipate a lot of unanticipated things because we did have a wetlands resource survey done in 2013. And our engineers and architects had access to that survey as well as all the other Shaw Master Plan documents.
Right, so I don't know if they would be there, but who would pay for that? Is that,
It would,
is that would come out of the contingency?
that would come out of the contingency if there were.
You've got
if there were.
$600,000 in contingency in that.
Pay for what, though?
That there were potentially environmental issues along Shaw Lane that would have to be addressed.
Do we have any examples of what those are?
Like I said, this was selected.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about it, what
So
is it?
there was a potential vernal pools. There are several potential vernal pools that are not certified. My understanding, I read the Army Corps of Engineers website all weekend because I really know how to have a good time. My husband deserves an award because he's been very patient. So basically, with the vernal pools, we're not anywhere near the vernal pool. There's first the actual pool, then there's a 100-foot envelope, then there's a 750-foot critical terrestrial habitat. And within that 750 feet, which if you do the math, it's over 40 acres, you can develop 25% of that within that envelope, or concentric circle habitat. But there are also other ways that could be measured that would actually be more beneficial to all the uses at Shaw. We're looking into that right now. Because what they're trying to save and what the Army Corps is looking for is contiguous wooded forest land around the vernal pools, because that's where the pool breeding amphibians like to live. Regarding the widening of Shaw Lane, there is an existing culvert, it's an existing roadway. There are linear transportation guidelines within the Army Corps of Engineers documents that would enable us to undertake that activity, to widen that road. So I do feel that the $600,000 contingency would be sufficient, but I also feel strongly that because our OPM engineers and architects had access to all that information, that they've covered it.
So let me ask a few questions, and this really is for our town administrator. You know, in terms of revenue, you know, we heard that there was some one-time gains. At this point, it's one time, it's 1 year. What does our commercial growth look like for the next fiscal year?
Slower than it has been. You know, Galaxy is close to being built out. There is a phase 3 that is being under consideration right now. They did get a water allotment from Wilkes Water, so that's the next phase. The old soccer fields along Boston Road, that's the next potential development. So there will be some growth relative to that particular development. But right now, we're planning on not relying so much on new growth going forward. The Galaxy development obviously brought in well over $1 million. A lot of that was New England Power, electrical, and transformers and so forth. You know, this year we had $450,000, well down from $1 million. So going forward, we're anticipating less new growth than we've received.
And what's the status of our TIFs? How far we're moving along them in terms of some of those decreasing?
Yeah, they're you know, Atlas Box is 10 years into it. Nick Nunemark is probably as good a source on that, but they had 10% roll off this year, which added to our new growth. So, you know, very few TIFs are remaining in the town. Most of them are no longer in existence. Atlas Box is the biggest TIF that we have, I think.
Okay.
The liability for the taxpayer, it says a little over $110,000, $110 a year, $9 a month or something like that.
Yeah, so it's It's 106 based on a $145,000 average home in Sutton.
And my answer to that is, when you look at the transfers of real estate in the town of Sutton, when's the last time you saw a $300,000 house? I think in a lot of cases, you're gonna find that it's more like four.
I got the
450.
345 came from the assessor, so that's what I'm going on.
Yeah, but I don't believe him.
But that's what I have to go on.
I just don't see that as I think it's a very basement number. I think the real number is gonna be much greater than, what'd you say, $1,000 a year?
Well, I think if the valuation, I mean, it's,
And are we up for a reval?
Yeah, and I think FY '19, Nick, when's the 9-year reclass?
You update the values every single year.
Yeah, but the reclass?
In 2020, we have to do a full measuring list of all the property in town.
So 2020 is the full.
so,
Okay.
but the valuation of the houses, if they change, I mean, we're still just dividing the principal. The principal for this loan is $302,000, and then there's the interest. So it does. I get where you're going in that the average, but then it would change how it all gets divided
And
out
that's
anyway.
not even talking about the police station yet. And I think the average taxpayer in the town pays a lot of taxes and gets very little back. There are houses here that pay their full tax burden, or assessment, and don't have water, don't have sewerage, don't have gas.
Yep.
I mean, how much can you put on these homeowners?
Right. I think the one thing I'd like to say is, we build a police station. Hopefully, most of us aren't spending any time there. The library, at least, is a service that every person in this town can come in and enjoy, from toddler to elderly. We provide services to everyone,
I understand that.
So I think, yes, there is a cost, but I also think there's a value to our community.
Okay. What are you gonna do with the old one, if this all
That's up to the
transpires?
administrator.
Oh, pass the ball.
That's above my pay
Okay.
grade.
I'm just asking.
Put the cart before the horse.
Yeah. Neil's sitting over there saying, I hope they don't ask me anything.
Lisa, again, I want to thank you for your work on this. I've got a few more questions.
Sure.
Our library is probably the average size of a single-family house,
Yeah, it is, actually.
2,100 square feet. If we don't have this built, and I realize having the state grant was a pivotal point to even have us really consider this realistically. Will the library lose accreditations, the ability to borrow materials, anything like that?
So right now, like I said, we're on a one in, one out. We aren't concerned about losing accreditation as we stand in our space. If our population were to grow a certain amount, we're very low on books for our population. Even if we didn't grow by the standards, we should have double the number of items that we have down there, and we can't even put one more book in there. But we're not in danger of losing that. We're able to staff the number of hours we need and all that sort of thing. So I'm not concerned about losing our certification for that reason. There have been suggestions brought up about dividing up our space and working in two spaces and then staffing, and then meeting the hours requirements would become very difficult and things like that without an increase in budget. So then we would have to talk about that. Frankly, as trustees, we spoke about tonight the police station space. If somebody were to say, well, why don't you use that? As trustees, we like to keep in mind to the budget. The value in adding the little bit of space that we'd get from the police station would cost more than we'd get from it. So it wouldn't, from a trustee perspective, it wouldn't be worth it to vote in favor of doing it. And so we agreed that that would be something we would probably all be against. We'd just stay as we were rather than try to make that expansion. They're not joined, they're not joinable spaces, things like that. So that's basically the options, to stay as we are and muddle along with our tiny spaces. To put that in perspective for the rest of the board, so our library is 0.2 square feet per person in town. When you look at the average for towns our size, so I looked at the MBLC website, they have a ton of statistics available. The average for towns our size is 1.5 square feet per person, which is about what we would be if we built this facility. We'd be 1.6. So we're not asking for the biggest, we're asking for the average.
I have to disagree with asking for the average. This library, the size of this library is bigger than Auburn, Millbury, towns that have a higher population than Sutton has, and I don't think the growth of population in Sutton is going to be exceeding that of, Millbury and Auburn anytime.
Well, we're building for a 20-year horizon, right? So we have to build for 20 years. I mean, people could make the same argument for the police station. It's the size of Webster's, so.
I'm not talking about the police station.
No, I'm not talking
specifically about
I know,
the
I
library.
am. I'm just giving some context to it. So, again, the data's the data. I took all the towns in this state from 2,000 to 15,000 and calculated how many square feet per person they had for their libraries, and it comes out to 1.5. So it's the whole state. So I know maybe Millbury's at 16.3, but Blackstone's much larger. They're at like 21,000. The data's the data. I took the widest data set I could.
I talked to, and I sat down with Betsy to go through some of those costs, and she indicated that there'd be basically a half-time maintenance person required, and that would be the extent of the personnel. But when I looked through the report and the recommendations for a library this size, they were recommending a number of positions that we're not going to fill those positions.
Right.
And my question is, we're building this 17,000-foot library, and we're not staffing it up to the recommendations. Are we going to be able to get the full utilization out of a 17,000-foot library with the same number of staff that we have for 2,000 square feet?
Yes, we will have to, again, because a big driver of our square footage is the larger community meeting space that we have in there, which is larger than it maybe could have been. It was designed for flexibility, though, so that we could use it for a lot of town needs. So it is designed to run on a smaller scale with a smaller scale staff, because we're using a lot of glass to divide the space, so we have the visual sight lines that we need without the noise of having children playing while adults are trying to read. So it was a primary concern, and I think Neil could speak to this every time. How are the sight lines? Can we staff it? Can we staff it efficiently? People like to point to, there's a clause in the contract that we try to build the most cost-efficient, staff-efficient space that we can, and monitor the cost. It's clause 18. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it memorized, obviously. But that's one of the things that we have to do to comply with the agreement. So I really feel strongly that we're doing that.
You had mentioned something in your comments, and I spoke fast, I didn't get everything written down. So the operating expenses, heating, lighting, maintenance, all of these,
Right.
sort of much larger for a 17,000 square foot building than for.
Yeah, so we have 3 estimates from 2 buildings that JRA built recently, so they're our architect, and those came in around 34,000, plus an estimate from our engineer, which was also in that $35,000 a year range. We anticipated the half-time maintenance person would be 15,000, and then today we just found out about the 6,000 for the liability insurance for the facility, so that's 56,000. For our operating expenses.
In mentioning liability insurance, with what feels like it could be significantly understaffed facility, just based on the sheer size of it, is there any additional risk liability that would come into play with not really having it?
It's not
fully
really
staffed?
understaffed, because I know it sounds like a very large, when we don't just have 2 people or 1 we have usually 3 people in there during the busier times of day, after school, et cetera.
But
So I
your
will feel-
report recommends a lot more people.
I'm not sure where you're getting that from, because which part of the report?
Yeah, it's a pretty thick report, but
I
there
know.
is I'm not sure which page it's on, but there are recommendations for positions. It says currently Sutton has
Oh, that
0,
one,
we're gonna
yeah.
add
Yeah.
an assistant,
Yeah.
blah, 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 circulation director, all those kind of
Yeah,
costs. So it looks like it's understaffed.
I'll have to look into that and I can get back to you, but as far as the staffing that we have, we feel we can manage it. I mean, an assistant circulation director, I mean,
That was just one. I just remember that was a position that we got a much bigger facility, and we're running it with the same number of people.
That is the plan, and it's been gone over multiple times with
So can I take,
ROPM,
can I
our
take the
tech-
questions back in a different direction? So these questions seem to be circulating around, there's a need, is it going to raise our cost on maintenance, staff, et cetera, assuming we need that size? I'd like to take it back to the need part of this equation. I think you said 200 items per day are going out the door. How many of those items are actually from your inventory versus through the network?
So the vast majority are still from our inventory. We are actually still a net lender. We try very hard to share what we do have within CW Mars if we have it, because we get a grant in kind for doing that. So it actually saves us money to be a net lender. But those 200 items are physical items. I'm counting only the physical items that go out that door when I say 200.
But they could have come from another library's
They could have come-
inventory.
Yeah, they could have come from another library's inventory. That's very common. I think I've got a few at home right now that are from other libraries.
So I want to hear more about the need to grow. Because I think the only thing I heard you say and first, thank you so much, as everybody did. This is great work. And I'm asking these questions because I do see the debate going on in
Yeah.
Facebook and everything. And you can see the signs up in town. This is a heavily debated topic. I just want to hear more on the need to grow.
Okay.
And so far, what I've heard is we can't, if we want to bring in new inventory for our shelves, we have to remove something off our shelf.
Right.
I get that.
We do bring in a lot, and we also do let our stuff go out because we have no room. So that's why we're a net lender. We, especially our older materials, we will let go. The other things, though, I don't know, is more of a space situation. When we have story time, it's smaller than the desk in here as far as space. And, we'll have 15 little kids and their parents there for story time. If we want to do more than one thing at a time, we want to have a meeting here and a book group there, somebody's sitting out in the public area of the library having their meeting, rather than in a meeting space or a quiet space. So there's a lot of space issues that really drive the need to grow as well. Space is probably the biggest thing. And then as far as needs, so there's a few things that also really would make it beneficial for us to move. So, think about the number of people checking out 200 items a day. And their families coming in and out the door by the basement, by the 3 parking spots we've got, by the fire station. Frank, my son almost got hit tonight because I parked on Oxford Road. And he got out of the car before I had a chance to, because we parked on Oxford Road because I wanted the library spaces available. It's dangerous. And that's a huge part of wanting this bigger, safer space up on Shaw Farm. It's not safe to have families with children trying to get in and out of that space when you've got call firefighters coming in, fire trucks and ambulances going out. It's not a safe situation. So that space and safety and parking, are probably the biggest drivers of the need for the space.
I don't mean to ask probably somewhat of a duplicate question, but I think it relates. You know, I think maybe the mental picture of what a 20th century library looks like versus a 21st century library.
Right.
So what does a contemporary, what does a present library look like? What are those needs? What are we really asking for?
So, I mean, we have some shared space between the children's area and the teen area that are for youth activities. We're trying to do a lot with STEM learning, so we have a lot of classes with robotics down there. We have for both young and teen, so, whether it's, a Raspberry Pi class put on by Rhode Island Computer Museum or other technology-based learning. We have a lot of that down there. We had a very popular program that we had to cap called Evil Genius Club this summer, where the kids did a lot of different programming activities. Next week we have a metalsmithing class. So we try to do a lot of things that are more technology learning driven down there now. And I think the thing about libraries, and I think people tend to forget, is libraries are actually early adopters of technology usually. So right now you'll see a lot of libraries are putting in 3D printers, something people don't generally have at home. When I was in college, if I wanted to use a computer, I had to go to the library. So I think libraries have evolved. We've had a library in Sutton since 1876, and we still have the need for a library, even though times have changed, technology has changed. We still have this need for a library. And I think, yes, it's, library, and it's got that Latin root for books in it, but it's really more about lifelong learning and community space than it is about just books and information on a page, whether it's a web page or a book page.
Again, another question, just for the benefit of us, I asked it earlier, but just for anybody, if we do have fans out there listening, if we don't move forward on this as a town now, or actually, let me ask the question differently. To move forward on this, it's this current design or nothing
It's this project at this location,
at this price.
at this price. Now, there is a level of flexibility should we run into some unforeseen circumstance that makes a part of the design just not feasible. The MBLC will work with us. They're very flexible as far as, their biggest goal is to get libraries' facilities improved throughout the state. We're at the top of the list.
Yeah, so I gotta imagine there are people out there, and you can see it in the yards, that are against it, that are for it, and then I'm sure there's some that are in the middle that if it
Right.
was a little bit less money, maybe I could see it, because they agreed to the growth need, they agreed to the
Right.
safety and giving more access to public space. I agree to all of those as well. It's the price, I think, that a lot of people are having a hard time with. So if we don't move forward at 11 million, we don't move forward, is that correct? Like, we can't say let's
No.
go back to the drawing board and make it a $8 million library.
No, we can't do that. Once we're in the project, we will do as much as we can to continue to fundraise and offset the costs. We will do as much as we can to make appropriate design choices that are still available to us, to keep it under. And I do want to keep in mind that 11 million does include the escalation and the contingencies. If we do get started, we wouldn't need all of that escalation money. So, right, Neil?
That's correct.
What does that mean in English?
So
And how much does that cost?
Inflation.
Oh, did you say
Time value
inflation?
of money.
Oh, did you say?
It's inflation.
It's the
It's
time
inflation.
value of money.
Time
exactly.
value of money,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, but it's inflation? Okay.
Yeah, it's basically,
It
yeah.
means the longer we wait.
But how much are we
the
talking here? Like 3%? 2%?
It's 1.6 million of the 11 million.
Okay.
So it's of the 6 million, actually, because the 5.1 is fixed. So
If we built it today,
if we could, yeah, it could be,
things go up in
Yeah.
price and. they
Price of
build
steel
that
goes up,
That was
the
the-
price of,
That was the one
material.
thought that I was going to offer if nobody had any other questions for us. Is
We
that
we have a few more, I think.
yeah.
the one I don't want to call it an error. I just want to say the one thing that a lot of municipalities overlook is the fact that in 5 years, whether it's a $10 million project or an $8 million project, 10 years from now, you'll get less for the same 10 million or the same 8 million.
We may all be plugged in virtually from home in our virtual community space 5 years from now, the way technology is moving. That's one thing that I think a lot of people are trying to weigh here is
Yeah.
the pace of technology advancements with investing into a space. And I know it's much more than printed bucks.
Right.
It's a community space. To me, that's a huge positive that we don't have a lot of community space here.
We have very little space that's open to the community, so I
But
would
who knows
say-
what 5 years, 10 years
Well,
is going to look like? We may all be sitting on our couch plugged in, even in this meeting.
I hope not.
No, but I mean, your
Sincerely
point's
hope-
taken that costs go up. So
Costs,
we
yeah.
understand that. Diane, I think I may have interrupted your question when I jumped in on staffing levels. So if,
Oh, no, I think we were both hitting it from the same area.
Okay.
okay.
Neil, are you involved in the police station?
I am.
Do they have a public room?
They
A
have
meeting room for the public?
they have a
not quite as
they have a
comfortable.
training room that's located on the first floor of the station.
Didn't I hear early on that this was open to the public for meetings? Or am I mistaken?
It could be.
It could be.
It could be.
But it's typically a training area. You know, different communities can come in and do a presentation to the members of the department. And I don't know how many seats in that community room. The meeting room.
I think it's somewhere around 40.
Okay.
40, it's a big room. Okay.
And Betsy, you said that the community meeting space would be open without the library actually being open? So.
It's it's one of the features. It's a design feature that we put in. We have, basically, as you come in the side entrance, we have the ability to close the entire library and have the community room able to be reserved and opened and still have access to the bathrooms without having to have library staff in the library. So we could have a meeting, like right now tonight, the library closes at 8. You could actually have a meeting go a little later, for different community groups that have reserved and signed an agreement.
Someone has to be staffing a public facility, I would think, in order to have,
Well, maybe whoever's holding the meeting would.
Whoever's holding the meeting would have to make a commitment, and we would have a charge associated with ensuring that the commitments were met.
From a liability standpoint, you're gonna have to have somebody who works for the town,
Okay.
opening and closing.
We hadn't anticipated that, but yeah.
So I'll say, from the school perspective,
Yes,
when we rented a part of the school, you had to have somebody from the school available to open and close, alarm,
right.
whatever. So you will have to have somebody from the town responsible for that room.
We'll have to look into that for the purposes of this
But that may
space,
be
because
part
it's,
of your rental.
yeah,
That would cover the staff.
right, if we were staffing it later.
But you shouldn't put out there that it can just be open.
Oh, it wouldn't be just open, I mean, it would be like,
Somebody from the town would have to be responsible for that room.
okay.
First meeting at 6 million.
So, Shaw Farm, and there's a long drive down to get there. It's not, down the driveway. It's not, the visibility is not what, for better or worse, what it is now. So, have you addressed any of the security issues that there might be for when people are closing up at night, or?
Yeah, I mean, we will have obviously all the required lighting and a security system and things like that.
Does the design include security system?
Yes.
Cameras and?
Yes.
But no security personnel or anything from the, that's, okay.
Do you have any estimates of the project cost that entails putting in the driveway and all that could I'm assuming whatever you put in for the driveway eventually can be leveraged downstream plans for extending
Yes.
the property use
Yes.
outside of the library?
Yes. So if you look at the overall design, we have the 50 parking spaces lined out for the library, and then we actually have a second tier of parking that's sort of in gray, that is potential parking spaces that could just be appended to the existing parking lot to access other areas of Shaw Farm, or other facilities that would be put on the farm.
Do you know the cost, though, for bringing in that widening the road?
Yeah, we have, the costs are included in the 11
ju-
million, but it's, I don't know exactly how much it is, because it's buried in between two different
I don't
things.
have them available. It's part of the 32 divisions or whatnot of the construction estimate that was provided.
So there's the cost estimates that are part of the actual physical bringing in the asphalt, but then there's also engineering costs that are buried in another part of the budget, so.
Because the master plan, as you mentioned, has a vision of sports, et cetera, down the road. The town would incur those costs to do that eventually, if we were to pursue those avenues. I'm just wondering, like, we talking $1 million, $2 million, 500,000, that
I
we're gonna have to pay eventually anyway, that this is gonna cover?
mean, just the asphalt alone is like 100.
Like,
Yeah, if you don't have the numbers, that's fine.
I
I
don't
just-
have
I was
it,
just
so
curious.
I'd rather,
Yeah.
I'd rather not
Yeah.
I appreciate
throw a
that.
number out there from
Yeah.
the back of my pocket.
Okay.
But then the rest of the engineering costs are in the engineering professional services budget, so I can't speak to those.
From the master plan standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and I apologize, I haven't done too much research. I know the master plan for Shaw was somewhat of a soft master plan, but where does your footprint fit within that master plan that the town already had envisioned?
So it is at basically where the farmhouse used to be.
But where does that, in terms of what the town had
So
already envisioned there?
nothing had been planned for that spot. So it is kind of put in between where the planned track and field were and the planned baseball field were. It's a little bit upland from that.
Up on the top of the hill. And in terms of the design, who was involved in coming up with the design of, similar to what Jared was saying, and, the vision of what a library,
Right.
is or should be 20 years from now?
So we had a library building design team, just like you would had for the school and you have for the police station. We interviewed several OPMs first, picked them, picked CMS. Then we interviewed 5 architects?
5 firms.
5. And we selected Johnson Roberts Architects. They have designed, is it 38 now? Libraries. They have designed 38 libraries in the state of Massachusetts.
So they designed it.
With our input. We met many, many times. And we had public surveys done to find out what people were looking for in a library space. We also had sort of less formal surveys done down at the senior center and at the school, where people just put stickies where things they wanted, different ideas, parking and things like that.
So I have a question, probably more for the town administrator, the board. So we spent $4.5 million on Shaw 10 years ago. And the master plan process was put in place, and we've identified that we wanted a track and field and a baseball field. That's a pretty expensive track and field and, baseball being built that hasn't even happened yet. I mean, $4.5 million 10 years ago, and what's its value today? My question is, if this isn't built, if the library isn't put there, when are we going to start getting our return on our investment of $4.5 million with Shaw? And I'm just, that's just a question that needs to be put out there. And the commitment that the community will put forward is, now we're going to potentially see that. So I just, is that, come up at all, in the discussion, I guess?
that is my understanding of why the town purchased Shaw Farm. It was done before I got here. But the fact is, I was aware of, after the fact of what happened. My concern with Shaw is there wasn't enough due diligence done on that property beforehand. We were scared because there was a 40B development being proposed for that, and there were thoughts of the whole hill was going to be covered with residential, apartment units. So the town obviously moved forward with the exercise of the 61A right of first refusal, purchased that property. In addition, we had the capital stabilization override, which I think is a real positive on this whole debt exclusion. So beyond that, there are vernal pools, there are all the issues that Lisa mentioned. And so the reality of moving forward with this is somewhat dim, but if you throw enough money at it, anything can be done. And that's why I'm doing, that some people have raised an issue about the track. And we are going out to bid for a feasibility study on the track to make sure that all these issues are addressed prior to issuing a contract. But at some point, the town owns 135 acres. What the town wishes to do with it, the library is one proposal. That's really a question for the town, not for me.
Understood. So likewise, the town could identify that as surplus.
They could.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know that there'd be any buyers of that surplus property considering all the issues associated.
Again, you guys have done an awful lot of work, but at the same time, and I think we've acknowledged it at this committee over the last couple of years anyways, is the town administrator, the town accountant, and the administration here has done an awful lot of work, a lot of hard work in getting our operating budget to the point where we are sustainable, where we're spending, we're living within our means. We're not using one-time revenues as a funding source. So my question is probably, and I don't want to put you on the spot necessarily, Jim, but how do we shoehorn these expenses, additional expenses, into our current operating budget without going back to one-time revenues?
I don't have a good answer for that. This plus the police station, they both will add additional demands on our budgeting process. We only have $600,000 to $700,000 of new revenue every year. This committee knows that better than anybody. And there are some unknowns every budget year. Healthcare is the biggest unknown.
Right.
If we get a 15% rate increase on healthcare, I have to go back to the unions, make plan design changes, and try to scalp that down significantly. Blackstone Valley Vocational School is another big unknown. It goes from staying the same to an increase in $150,000. It really depends on how many students attend. But it's an unknown, as this committee knows. So, we'll do the best we can with the circumstances. If the town votes to approve this library, we'll do everything we can to finance it. It's no different than the police station. There are increased operational costs for the police station. Same insurance, builder's risk insurance, all these other costs, but we're going to carry them. And it's a question of whether the town wants to build this library, and if it so chooses, then it's our job to figure out where the revenue is going to come from to support it.
Okay. Hold on a second. Are you, because we're going to go through these, make sure everyone here has.
I'm all set.
All set. Mr. Niedermeyer.
My name's Robert Nonnemarker, and I'm on the Board of Assessors. Last Tuesday night, I met with Betsy Perry in regards to the estimated impact on the taxpayer, and I prepared a sheet for her. And given the numbers that she had, an estimated interest rate, which we never know until we go out and borrow, not exactly positive about the amount of money that we're gonna borrow, which is no different than the police station and the other types of things. But the number that I gave her, that she gave the Board of Selectmen within the hour, was the first year impact was $135.
Right, I said on average, that's why I was, on average over
You
the
said-
20 years.
You said less than $10 a month, which
On
is not
average.
correct, so that's 135 per month. And in
Not
regards
per
to
month,
how...
per year.
Per year.
And that's the first year. I would mention that it was on average over the life of the debt exclusion, but.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
That's
So it's
got nothing to do with
135
it.
the first year, and it goes down.
The question was raised is how do we come up with that particular number of the average single-family property? All the properties in the town have a code associated with it. A single-family home has a code of 1010. It's a state thing. Condominium, something different. Business, something different. And I can tell how many single-family homes that we have in the town, the total value of that, and I divide the two, and then that's how I come up with an average value of a single-family home of $345,000 plus dollars. Obviously, there are a lot of homes in town that are substantially greater than that, but there are also a number of them that are less. So that's the average. That's the only thing that I can do to come up with that particular thing. I have a question for Neil. What is the gross square footage of this building, proposed building?
It's roughly 17,000 square feet.
This town hall, not including the police station, not including the fire station, is 17,058 square feet. That includes everything, the porch, the little entry way out in the back. So you're building a building the same size, square footage as this building. To me, that seems to be excessive for a single-use property.
So again, to speak to the size of the building, one of the documents within this binder is our building program. And it's based on a set of standards that the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners recommends, called the Wisconsin Standards. And it lays out everything. How many seats, how many linear feet of shelving, how much of everything. Then with that information, and it's based on our population, with that information, then the architect looks at how much space it needs to incorporate each of those items and comes up with the size. And again, it's 17,000, which brings us to about the average for towns our size. So yes, it does seem large because we're in very tight quarters here. I think most people within town hall also wish they had a little more space. Maybe it'll be helpful to get us out of the way. But, so again, I realize that for some people it seemed like a lot of space. But the NBLC wouldn't have funded a 10,000 square foot library because it wouldn't have met the standards. So then we'd be building it on our own, right? So if we built like I said, if we built a $5 million library, it wouldn't meet the standards and we'd be paying $5 million. So, that's the best part of this is we had all their advice and, regarding the building. We're building something that actually will last the community longer than it needs to, longer than 20 years. It's built for a 20-year population growth. Instead of building something that's too small and will be outgrown and wish it was bigger 10 years down the road.
I think everyone's, it's stressful to get questioned
Oh, yeah, no, it's fine. I'm good.
repeatedly for years now,
Yeah.
by everyone. But I think that when we look at program attendance, for those that, get the annual report, that go to town meeting
Yeah.
and so forth, I think there's a number of people that are just having trouble justifying a library of that size when you look at total program attendance over the past 4 years of record in our.
That's actually a good point.
report.
So we have to cap our program attendance because we don't have enough room. So when we have a lot of these programs, we can only have, if we have people doing an activity around tables, we can only fit 8. You know, we have to limit how many people can come to an activity. So
Yeah, so I think with every question and with every answer, there can be a counter. You know, Jared had asked what percentage of materials are actually physical materials that people come in to borrow, and I don't
I
think
said
you have-
200, no, I said 200 items per day, physical materials go
Actually, so
across the
just to
door.
clarify, my question was, of the 200 per day, what % were off your shelves versus shipped in from nearby libraries?
I don't have that number, I mean, in front of me. I don't have that.
You know, but ultimately, you know, the same question, same counter could come to, you know, we have to cap how many do you have to cap? What percentage of the programs actually have a requested enrollment higher than what you can fulfill within the library? And that may not be something you have.
I could get, there are a lot. Certainly almost every children's program has a waiting list.
What would be, so the ratio for that was 1 to 8. But what would your potential ratio be? Because then
We
you
could probably have-
potentially be looking at additional staffing
So-
to not have a waiting list.
Right, so generally speaking, a lot of those programs are outside vendors who come in, and they cap based on the space. So when we pay them out of grants a lot of times, so we're like, for this year, we're using an Osterman grant that was $10,000 that we're using to pay for a lot of our outside vendors that come in to do things. So they're capping based on our space, not based on their ability to handle, you know, the kidding around yoga person teaches classes of 20 somewhere else. She can only teach 6 or 7 downstairs.
Can I just clarify, are people concerned about the size of it or the cost of it? Because what I'm hearing is, we could build a much smaller library for $6 million of our own money. Or we could build the much bigger lot for $6 million
Exactly.
of our own money.
Exactly.
So are people concerned about the cost, or that it's too big, it's taking up too much space?
So I think
Because
the two go hand in hand when you're looking at, what we're being asked to do as a town. And I think people are trying to ask questions based on what, at least I know I am, based on what people have asked me, or what I've heard people providing misinformation on. So trying to make sure that, as we said earlier, that the masses listening to the Finance Committee on TV tonight can get that information. But
all 5 of our
ultimately
listeners, right?
I think there's a number of concerns that have been voiced across town, and we're trying to make certain that those concerns are addressed.
But is that correct? I mean, we could scrap the grant and build a much smaller, less expensive library, but it would still cost the town the same amount of money.
Pretty much. That's reasonably.
Almost like we have a match.
This is a match situation, exactly. So
Do we build a much cheaper, smaller library and spend $6 million, or do we take advantage of a grant and build a much bigger and pay $6 million?
I just want clarification. I know you said that this design based that the architects came up with at this price tag was off of the recommendations. Does that also equal, we went on the smallest size we possibly could?
Yes, we did, actually. So there's a few things we stepped up to the moderate. There are 4 levels. Most of it we did at the small, basic level.
So there's no, if we ever wanted this grant, there's no smaller
There isn't
version
a
of this.
smaller library.
It's this with the state's money, or to Liz's point, it's us footing it down when we find appropriate to get you guys more space.
So there is a cost of not doing this.
There is a cost.
Right.
We're foregoing $5 million.
Right.
To
So-
not do this. So
That's right.
I mean, I agree that it's a huge, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of tax. Believe me, I'm concerned about that. But I think we also have to think about the future, and that we're giving up $5 million of grant money. Yeah, we could do it much smaller, as some maybe would feel more comfortable with, but we're not going to get that match.
No.
That's what people have to weigh when
Yeah.
they come to
Absolutely.
town
This
meeting.
is-
Absolutely. yep.
This is
That's
the
part of it.
recommended size for our population. We've made, how many million times did I tell you to be frugal? A lot.
Well, I mean, I think it's, do we feel
Yeah.
like we need a library, or can we live with what
Right.
we have? And the size of the library,
Our,
I guess in my opinion, shouldn't be we need to think of other things besides the size of the library. We have to do it this size to get the grant money.
this is the, it sounds, 17,000 square feet sounds really big. It's less than a third of Market 32, I mean, so it's not, and again, it doesn't have a basement. I should be clear about that. So that includes all of the storage, utilities, so the usable, space that people will see will be quite a bit smaller than 17,000.
Yeah, I just want everyone.
So I know it sounds like a big number,
The
but that,
grant,
it's
how the grant works.
one slab.
I think that's important.
I think I forgot to say, it's usually one of the other things I say all the time, books are heavy, so we're building on a level, so that we don't have to worry about other issues.
So people can go online and review this through the town website to
Yes.
see the plans and everything, so they can get that feel that you just talked about, how much the meeting space may be and the library stacks may be. So that's just something that people can afford themselves in the next few weeks to be able to do too.
We ran a information session Friday morning, that was taped, that's available at suttontv.org. That shows pictures of the spaces that we're trying to improve and explains a lot of the process that we went through to get here.
Can we, and this may not be a question for you, maybe for the town administrator, if this goes through, if this article is passed, it doesn't mean you have the go. We then need to go to a special town election to approve override on the spending. Is that
Right.
correct?
A debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion?
That exclusion.
So this is another step that you need to take to keep the idea alive.
Yeah.
For those that want to support keeping it alive, they have to come out and vote for that. For those that don't want to, this is their opportunity to shut it down.
Right. Otherwise it goes, hopefully.
But then if it continues, it goes to the general population
That's correct.
to do a formal vote on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the town meeting is a formal.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
Everyone's
sorry.
invited.
Yes, yes.
Everyone's
Yes,
invited.
everybody's, yes, good point.
But on the contrary, if we say, well, we give a recommendation, but.
We're going to vote our recommendations, correct? Yep. And town meeting is going to vote, and if that passes town meeting, we've got a special election. Two-thirds of town meeting.
Majority.
And the special election would, how much would that cost?
Roughly $5,000-6,000.
Okay. We'd have a special election, and then that would seal the deal one way or the other.
But our job.
Our job is to evaluate what you've heard, what is before us, and to provide a recommendation as to yes, yea or nay.
So just as another point of reference, the commitment for the town portion of the funding has to be made to the MBLC, I believe it's
January
January 12th of next year. So the vote would have to occur prior to that date.
Right. Okay.
Well, a little, yeah, so we can finish all of our documentation. So I wanted to clarify too, people have said, well, it's the state's money, it'll go back to the state. It won't go back to the state, it won't go back into the treasury. It goes to the next library on the list, which is Greenfield.
Okay.
So if we say no, then Greenfield is on the clock, as they say in the draft.
Everyone's questions been
Also,
good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
yep.
And if, I don't know if there's anyone from the public that'd like to address us or question us that's out there?
Chairman, if I may,
You
Justin
absolutely.
Mann, 3 Mill Road.
Come up.
I have no comments, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to submit a document for the board's consideration in terms of this article, because my name was mentioned in specific, and I believe that the interpretation that was given in terms of
Why don't you take a seat?
the guarantees. Yeah,
Just so we
sure.
can explain it.
Yeah,
So we-
sure.
okay.
It's my opinion that the guarantees and so forth inherent in the bill that I mentioned to when I presented to our board in terms of the 20-year penalty were in fact misinterpreted. As you can see in the document that I provided you, that is the terms of the grant. It can be found in 605 CMR 6.05, section 2D, and the pertinent clauses are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are essentially the insurances that are necessary to put in place in order for the town to not only receive the grant, but also potentially incur penalty. And as you can see, this is particularly a contract, in that each particular clause is a separate item unto itself. Thus, Clause 1 states a specific thing. Clause 2 states a specific thing. Clause 3 states a specific thing. Now, Lisa had mentioned that the 20-year penalty in terms of operation is only in effect until the grant is paid out.
I didn't say that.
If you look at, that is actually Clause 3. That term specifically states that if there's any violation in terms of construction and so forth, that in fact the operative would be in breach. But the 20-year penalty in terms of operation is actually discussed in the previous article. And it states clearly in black and white that the town must operate this facility for 20 years, and if for some reason it is closed, and of course, all of the operational standards are actually defined in Mass General Law. I believe you can find them in Section 78, Chapters 19A and 19B. And essentially, it lays out required hours, required staffing, and things like that.
You can
It also
request a
talks to
waiver
it. It
if
also talks
necessary.
to the spectrum in terms of the budget impact. For instance, if the town cannot fund the library for 3 years consistently, providing at least a 2.5% operationals increase, then that in effect is violation of the terms defined by Mass General Law, which in my humble opinion would trigger that clause. So stating the fact that the 20-year penalty, where the grant would have to be repaid plus interest, goes away the moment the door is open, I feel that is a misstatement. And again, that's one of the reasons why I want to provide that in front of you. The other interesting thing that I've heard today can be found in the definitions in terms of the site itself. And Lisa had mentioned something that we have to build on this specific location and something unforeseen happens. Well, during her library presentation, she mentioned the fact that the town, unforeseen, moved to produce the police station project. Well, what happened when that station moves out is there is going to be additional space. According to the language that is highlighted in Section 6.02 within the definitions, it actually states that if there's an unforeseen circumstance that arises, the applicant is allowed to reapply for a grant. So, if the decision was made to possibly seek a grant to renovate the bottom floor of the town hall into the police station space, that is a possibility, at least in terms of the language of the grant. So, again, if we're talking about misinformation, I'd just like to clear the record, which is one of the reasons why I want to provide that document for this board to take a look at.
So I want to speak to that, because while it does say that if we use this facility for something else within that 20 years, if it's not operated as a public library, we would owe the state back, which would be a reasonable thing to assume. We'd have the same clause for the school.
But the school is required by law. Massachusetts general law requires that every single municipality operates some type of school facility. So the school is never going to be closed.
Right.
In years past, Sutton, when they faced budget crisis, this might be before you moved into town, actually it was before I moved into town, there was a point when the budget was so constrained, they actually had to operate under double sessions. So the town did everything possible to maintain a school facility. A library is not a mandatory service. It is a luxury. And as we know, there was a period in recent history when our town budget was hit significantly that resulted in 23 full-time positions being cut at the school. Why did that happen? Unforeseen circumstances, out of the town's control. But it hit our budget desperately. Sue was involved in the school, I was involved in the schools at that time, and I can tell you, if the town suffers a similar recession, there are not 23 bodies left in the school department to cut. So what is the town going to have to look to if that arises? And by the way, as we know in history, every 10 or 15 years, there's ups and downs in the economy that are unpredictable. Well, if the town gets whacked with such an unforeseen expense, which again is inevitable, where are we going to cut? Well, under the terms of that grant, the library is going to be positioned above everything. Because who in their right mind would want to incur the penalty contained in the grant agreement? 4.9 million is coming from the state because the additional is a green grant, correct? $4.9 million plus interest. Imagine what that interest level will be in 15 years. It's a real possibility. That is a legitimate concern. So I'd just like to clear in the air on that regard.
I would like to respectfully disagree. The intent of those clauses is that it remain a public library. Clause 2 doesn't say a level of municipal support that's required. Clause
That's defined
3.
in Massachusetts general law.
Clause 3 does just say that it should be a state aid qualified library. And we've confirmed this actually with our MBLC contact, that should an unforeseen circumstance arise, it could be run with volunteers 1 day a week. Their intent is that it remain a library. They're the Board of Library Commissioners. Of course, they want an assurance that it will be a library, not that when it's done, it will be, oh, that was a nice building, let's make it the town hall. Of course, then they'd want to be paid back with
Okay,
interest.
So, I guess we get the point. I'll make copies of that. We'll send that around to everyone. And, thank you.
Michael Kenny, 324 West Sutton Road. Just a quick question. Is the space, Jesse, between the library now and the police station, will that cover the 17,000 foot that's required? You know, you said that they could change, the grant could be changed and altered, but it would still have to maintain the 17,000 foot.
No, it doesn't say that at all. The terms of the agreement
Second
says
question.
you could reapply for a modification, which means you could go back and get a $1 million grant that might help pay the costs.
When could
of
you do
renovating
that?
the basement. It's in the terms. It would be up to
Do you know
the
how-
applicants.
But how long is the turnaround time? Is that something?
I have no idea.
So it's reapplying for a new?
It's in the contract.
Second was, 36 libraries have received this grant. So either one, there's 36 towns in the
Could you come up just so people can hear?
36 towns have received this grant. So for the scare factor and the scare tactic, I want the voters to vote on this with a clear mind if they can afford the increase in taxes or if they can't. The scare tactics have to go. 36 communities out there applied and got this grant.
Well, there's a waiting list, so
There's a
one
waiting
that
list. So
was
everyone
online.
between Greenfield, Auburn, whoever it may be out there, is setting themselves up and didn't do their due diligence to find out that if there's a change in the economy, we're all going to be paying back libraries and we're going to lose our town and we're going to bankrupt. It's a scare tactic. It's a true scare tactic.
Those towns might have room in their financial budgets, operating budgets, to handle the whack. We don't. We've already cut the fat out of our budget.
So Sutton, compared to all those other towns that have applied, is in no shape as these other towns are, you're stating?
Mike, I think you're a member of the Board of Selectmen, and you are present at all the financial updates, and I think the one consistent message we receive is that the operational budgets are currently tight as can be, because the funding is not equal to it, and it's possible that the operational demands will outpace funding.
So let me ask this question, Jim. In comparison to other towns, how are we doing?
I mean, I really can't make a statement in comparison to other towns. I can say Sutton is in good shape. It will put a strain on our budget, both the new police station and the library. And, our revenue is limited. Our new revenue every year is at best $750,000. And it's a challenge. It'll be a challenge without the police station, without the library. And with them, it'll be an additional challenge. But
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Again, I'm not up here to say one way or another if we should have a library or if we shouldn't. State the facts of what's going on, what's the situation, and let the townspeople vote for it. Not a factor of if we don't get this done, there's going to be consequences, and this is going to happen, or unforeseen, or what are the unforeseens? Let's see what these unforeseens are. Every project has an unforeseen. If we were to say, okay, we're going to wait, Mr. Rico brought something up that really hit home with me, is when you said, we don't have much. How much can we take from the taxpayers? How much money can we take? I don't have water. I don't have sewer. You know, I pay my taxes like everyone else. I kind of want something. Personally, I want something with my tax money. Is it a library? I don't know yet. But what I'm saying is that I want something for my money. I want to be able to say that I have something. Not to sit there and continuously dish out money, you know, that the cost of living in town. It's the way it is. I mean, we all do it, we all pay it. But let's take advantage and take a look at this and say, let's weigh our options. Is it worth the cost of the increase in taxes, or isn't it worth the cost of increase in taxes? The operational costs.
I think that's what we're talking about here tonight, so.
Thank you.
We need to.
Thanks, Jeff.
Come on. You bet. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Lisa.
Any other questions,
set?
concerns?
No?
I'm all set.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Appreciate it, everyone.
Hey, it only took me an hour and a half.
That's okay.
good.
It's okay.
Record time.
Thank you.
Smiling. There we go. Thank you.
So it's 8:35. Without any additional questions, I think we can get a vote or a motion.
Make a motion to
close
the
public hearing.
public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, so the public hearing is closed at 8:35. So
I type all this as you went.
You know, I'm not sure how everyone feels on all of these. You know, I think most of us have, we had some questions answered tonight. I think we probably have a feeling on most of the articles. We can go through these very quickly, I think, and make a vote, or we can schedule another meeting. My preference would be, let's go through and get it done.
We go forward and take our votes this evening.
Right, just knowing how difficult it is to
We have
schedule a meeting. Okay. So why don't we go down one by one? Liz, we can work on recommendations
Later.
as we go. We'll all take notes. So Article 1, which was to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken on Article 6 of the May town meeting to decrease state aid by $1,392, increase new growth by $15,612, and to then fund the, increase the appropriation to the school to fully fund Chapter 70.
Make a motion that we accept Article 1, or vote on Article 1.
I second.
Discussion on that? All those in favor of recommending passage of Article 1?
Aye.
None opposed, and that is, we have 3, 5, wow. Article 2 is to see if we will transfer from overlay surplus funds to OPEB $50,000.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't steal your thunder. I make the motion.
I'll second it for you.
In favor of saying yes to Article 2.
Discussion on Article 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 0 on that. Article 3 is the Article 3. This is the article where we will amend the vote taken to reflect the final tax levy limit. We'll move $275,000 of new growth to the capital plan and in place of free cash.
Make a motion to approve Article 3. That's right.
Discussion on Article 3 or questions on Article 3? All those in favor of Article 3?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. To 0. Number 4, if these is the so-called bad bills that are out there, 2 of them for WB Mason and Medicaid processing?
Medicare.
One from WB Mason and one from Medicare processing. The school department processes Medicare, and we get roughly $90,000 a year from them
Yeah.
doing the work. So this is one of the
Is it
bills.
Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicaid, I'm sorry.
All those in, oh, sorry, we need a motion.
I motion to accept Article 4.
In a second.
Second.
In discussion or questions? All those in favor of Article 4? Aye. Any opposed? 0. Article 5, see if the town will accept the provisions of blah, 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 as to establish a commission on disability.
Make a motion to approve Article 5?
Second.
In discussions or comments on Article 5? None. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 0. 8-0. Article 6, see if the town will accept provisions of blah, 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 relative to a board or committee member voting on issues wherein they have missed a single meeting but have filed an affidavit of examination of evidence and viewing so as not to be disqualified from voting on a matter.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion on Article 6. I think Article 6 is a good thing.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? 0. 8-0. Article 7 is allowing the Board of Selectmen to appoint a member of the Board of Selectmen to the Library Building Committee.
I make a motion to allow Board of Selectmen to appoint a member.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a quick clarifying question on this one. Could there be a motion to amend this so that it's not specific during town meeting? So it's not specific to appointing to the library committee, but that it's more flexible, that they can appoint to any town building committee going forward?
I suppose that could be at town meeting, but I don't know if that involves the home rule charter, that whole thing. I'm not sure what the logistics or legalities that are involved with that. But, I mean, your point's well taken, that we don't have to go through it every single time.
Yeah, it may be something that needs to be adjusted in the bylaws separately from.
The Board of Selectmen going to change this article at all?
No, this is the intent of the article, that one member serve on the library building committee. Hopefully we're done, or close to being done, building new buildings in town, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
It's not enough fun.
Make a motion to accept.
I think we already had a motion in a second.
Oh, yeah, we're in discussion.
You're in
All right,
discussion.
we're in discussion.
Don't discuss
Yes.
anymore.
I'm done discussing.
All in favor?
All those in favor of Article 7? Aye. Any opposition? 0. 8-0.
I think we found our new clerk.
Let's see, Article 8 is to see if the town will transfer and convey a portion of land at 25 Putnam Hill Road, which was a former septic across from the school. I think, if I remembered where that was. The intent, authorization to sell to an abutter. Motion and second.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion on Article 8. I think this is for fairly minimal transfer, at a minimal revenue to the town for the actual sale, but it'll at least get it onto the tax roll, so I don't see a big downside to that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 0. 8-0 on that. Article 9, similar article, which is the half-acre at 126 Minden Road. This is one in a number of steps that have to happen, I guess, for the state. So we'll take a motion and a second.
Motion to approve Article 9 as written.
Second.
And discussions, questions, comments? All those in favor of Article 9?
Aye.
Any opposition? 0. Article 10, to see if the town will waive the connection fee of $5,000 for the American Legion at the General Post with the source.
I make a motion that the town waives the connection fee, as the Dudley Gendron is a charitable organization.
I second that motion. I'll stand for that.
Discussion other than that? All those in favor of Article 10?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Article 11 is a zoning bylaw to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw by adding Section 4E, recreational marijuana establishments. It reads as follows, essentially prohibiting recreational marijuana establishments of pretty much all kinds within the town. And so,
I make a motion that the board vote on Article 11.
You want to vote on it? They couldn't figure it out.
I
They were
know.
3-2.
I know, but I think that we need to.
so what is your
open for a vote.
recommendation?
My recommendation is to approve.
That's what we need to have second, right?
So approve it as written?
To approve it as written.
I
That's my,
second.
it's a motion to go to vote, so. Doesn't mean I have to vote for it.
I second.
So just so everyone's clear on it, this is to approve the zoning bylaw, the amendment, which would prohibit that. Right?
Right.
Okay.
So-
I didn't know what you were saying there.
So we have to make a motion, we have to second that motion, and then we take our vote. So
We discuss it.
we discuss, then we take our vote.
Done.
Let's have a discussion.
Because I know we had
Right,
an
Jared,
issue
we
with
gotta
this last
discuss
week.
this.
I think we're in the discussion right now.
All right, here we go.
Does anyone have any comments?
So my comment is that I think the planning board, or two members of the planning board, made a valid point here in that there is potential for revenue to the town by not approving this article and not approving this change to the bylaws. So that's what I think is before this committee, is to say, from a financial standpoint, is it best to restrict potential revenue because of, just the nature of, what that those establishments are? Or do we want to say we can allow bylaws to be, written that would allow for this? So I think it's up for the town to vote, not necessarily, overall, but I think that our decision needs to be based on what's fiscally responsible as a town.
While we're discussing, because that's where we've arrived in the discussion part, if we don't, I just want to, it was, like an hour and a half ago, it's late, can we just remind ourselves, and mainly me, because I forgot, if we can't pass on this because the planning board already voted, is that the idea?
Correct.
So it's going to go to vote, and
Correct.
if we approve it, it's prohibited.
Now, if the town meeting approves
the town meeting approves it, it's prohibited, and they can't operate. If it gets voted down in town meeting and is not enacted, there's still another May and potentially fall town meeting to put something in place.
Correct. We have the moratorium until the end of October 2018.
Yeah,
in order-
Halloween. Halloween.
On any recreational marijuana, can't even say it, establishments so for another year plus. So we do have time for them to, put another article potentially.
Put another article,
Another
maybe
zoning
different
bylaw and
restriction.
general bylaw in this regard.
Likewise, if we don't prohibit it, we can still specify new, more restrictive zoning bylaws that can put it in a, in a similar area to what we did with medical marijuana. Where right now, she said, it's, if things went through, it would only be that zone if we don't change anything. So there's still that opportunity in the, until, well, it would be after the moratorium.
After this fall, so after this fall, if it doesn't go through, then we have an opportunity in the May town meeting or the fall town meeting of 2018 to try to put something different forward that maybe allows for some revenue with whatever restrictions that.
Well, you have to make that assumption that would.
Exactly.
That
If it doesn't come forward, it doesn't come
Yeah.
forward.
That's right.
If
It's
they
not an
have-
automatic.
We're talking real estate tax revenue, right?
Sales, local,
Yeah,
Sales
local.
tax.
oh, that sales tax would be for the state, right?
Well,
We're talking,
But there could be a local
Real-
sales
real
tax.
estate. It could be a local tax, you could do a number of different things.
Well, that's a big difference. Is it just, I mean, could we would we, I'm confused.
Let's ask the guy that's the answer.
That's the tax man.
These medical marijuana grow facilities in particular is what we're looking at in this case. It's, the town can sign a host agreement, should sign a host agreement. And that host agreement can pay the town up to 3% of gross revenues from that facility. So,
Medical, that's recreational.
well,
too?
either, the one developer that we had come before us was interested in the lot down on Gilmore Drive, which we approved at town meeting as eligible for medical marijuana grow facility. But he's asking, this developer's asking for the ability to grow for recreational marijuana as well, because he has the facility there, he's going to invest in the facility. He just wants to make sure that he can grow for both uses. And then the town would ento a host agreement of 3% of gross revenues, and, that could be a significant amount of money. $500,000 a year in receipts from that host agreement, potentially.
Thank you.
I think what's difficult here is, yes, the revenue is enticing. At the same point, the CCC hasn't even developed any policy. So for us to decide to do something, it would appear to be premature when the state hasn't even dictated how they're going to have the locals proceed.
And there will be a cost associated with,
Yeah.
I would think,
Yeah.
a town.
But likewise, potentially, the community would be letting potential business entities know where we were at, so that when they are looking to develop, they know that we would be customer-friendly to either, medical marijuana, but also commercial. So that positions we haven't lost ourselves out, because we still have to comply with all what the Cannabis Commission is going to put out. But at least it's providing something as a future look. Likewise, that could happen, and one town meeting bylaw could be changed, and we go back to restrict it. But presently, at time, with the uncertainty of what's going to happen, the potential of closing the door now.
I guess I'm a little confused as to, again, not because of you, but just because of these double negatives in here, what we're voting to restrict or not restrict. So what are you saying? That the town voted a couple of times to essentially pass this article. Are you voting to overturn that? Even though it is technically, I guess, overturned. Is that what you're
Well, no,
suggesting?
we've done the medical we zoned for medical marijuana. Sorry, long day. We've had that area there, so we've identified an area for that. Yes, I would say, potentially, if, I'm saying to say that we're open to recreational marijuana, but, potentially it could be in those zoned areas.
I think
That.
what he's saying is if we prohibit it, we could potentially be blocking some of these medical marijuana establishments that want to have a dual purpose. By prohibiting it, we could possibly, I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, just possibly. I'm just.
versus pushing this, at least kicking the can down the road a little further into May and fall, where we can maybe, when we know more.
You say kicking the can down, what is that, again, is that a yes, no, a vote or a no vote?
No vote. We'd
So, yeah.
say we wouldn't
So we're-
restrict,
So
we'd
if
keep our
we
doors
approve
open.
this, we're saying, yes, restrict, prohibit.
Right,
you know,
within the
close the
town
door.
side.
So if we say yes, we're saying no to recreational marijuana. Yes means
correct.
no, no, when something's like, something
We're
like
not,
that.
though. We're just giving
So
a
we're giving a
No, yes.
recommendation.
That's our recommendation,
And
yes or no.
so right now, the vote or I think the proposal or the motion was that, we approve this article. And so now, if we say yay, we're saying, yes, we want to prohibit. If we say nay, then we say, yes, we want to allow.
But does it go to a vote regardless of
It
what we
goes
say?
to a vote.
It's just-
Oh, yeah.
We're just-
Yeah,
we're
so
just-
we're just giving our recommendation.
That's all.
That's right.
So she's saying do a vote, and that's our recommendation. Is that what you're saying?
But
That's
we're
what we have to
providing
do
our
anyway.
guidance.
Yes.
Our
Just
vote
clarifying
is our,
what yes means and what no means.
and our vote is our guidance to
But also
those that-
getting answers from the town administrator about potential revenue and what that
Yeah, I mean,
means
that's a huge
is a factor, just to have, that we're familiar with. And what I was kind of, Jeff, was just, what we're presenting to the, business entities of the availability of having, marijuana, medical or commercial, it's showing a picture of it. And so they can, make the determination. And
So
it's
Jim,
just-
if we prohibit recreational, this potential medical group would probably find another spot?
It's hard for me to say that,
But there's a
but that is
chance.
my assumption, because they asked if they could grow for recreational as well.
But once again, we have that would be a refined zoning that could be put into where
Well, they can't
recreational
anyway
marijuana.
for the 18 months.
I don't think
though,
there are,
right?
we're not voting on any restrictions
No, no,
here
no,
on
no.
that. Those aren't in place. You're
No, no,
you're
I'm just
assuming
saying-
that they will be in place at some
No,
point.
but that could be one of those that's the next step after that.
Right,
Could
but
be.
that's not in front of us, though.
So basically, if we say, yes, we want to prohibit, and the town also votes that they want to prohibit, then it stops there until someone else puts in a bylaw,
Yep.
motion,
Correct.
article.
So what's the motion before us?
To approve Article 11, which says that recreational facility establishments will be prohibited.
Too many negatives, we're making it really confusing.
Right.
Getting late.
Okay, I think we got to vote, unless anyone's got anything else. Okay, the vote before us is to approve Article 11, or the motion before us, approve Article 11, which prohibits recreational marijuana establishments in the town of Sutton. So a yes vote will prohibit it, a no vote will not provide a prohibition in the town.
Correct.
All those in favor of Article 11? Aye. I don't know how many there were. 1, 2, 3. All those opposed? 4.
I'll puff to that.
Okay. Article 12 is a general bylaw. I'm not sure of the difference between Article 11 and Article 12.
It's the same thing, one is zoning, one is general.
I
You have
believe
to
you're
have
right.
both, so,
Same vote.
same
I think it's the same vote.
So,
They took no vote on it.
yeah, we can.
Because it wasn't in their
because-
purview.
Yeah,
Motion to vote on Article 12.
No, approve it or disapprove it.
you can make the
You can
motion to
make it
approve.
make the motion to
Vote.
approve.
And I don't have to vote to approve as you did. So I make a motion to not approve.
Motion, oh, jeez, Jared. Not approve, okay.
Motion to vote, no?
No.
I tried doing it.
Okay, if there's anyone else
No
that'd like to
means
make a
yes.
motion then, because that hasn't been seconded yet.
Can I retract my
You
vote?
absolutely can.
Can I make a motion to approve Article 12?
Yes, that'd be great.
I second that.
All right, so do we have discussion or comments on Article 12? The motion in front of us is to approve Article 12, which is a prohibition on recreational marijuana establishments in the town of Sutton.
No discussion.
All those in favor of Article 12? Aye.
Aye.
I think I counted 4. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That's 4.
We're consistent.
Yes, okay. Article 13, I think, is it should be housekeeping, which is to amend the language to allow a sign in front of the police station.
I make a motion to approve municipal facility signs in the town of Sutton.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of Article 13?
Aye.
Any opposed? 0, 8 to 0. Article 14, Article 14 is what we have written in the draft warrant, plus the additional otherwise non-conforming structures. Typically, we have concurred with and followed along on these kind of things with the planning board, but we can take a motion to...
Make a motion to approve Article 14 as written.
Second.
Discussion, Bob? No.
Are you non-conforming on a non-conforming?
Yeah, I'm not conforming.
Usually go for the planning board.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor of Article 14?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? 0, 8-0.
15 should be a quick vote.
It's a housekeeping thing. Article 15 is whether to recommend approval on the new library. And take a motion.
Make a motion to approve Article 15 as written.
Second.
Discussion on Article 15.
Yeah, so
We'll go this way.
which way are we going?
We'll go this way.
Okay. So I think we heard a lot tonight that if we, well, first off, there's a lot of debate on the size. Is it justified? We may all have our opinions on whether it's justified or not, but sticking to the facts of the way the grant is written, to access the grant, you have to build that size. So now there's a question on, do we want to spend money on a library at all with the state's assistance or not, is really what I think voters need to contemplate. And do they even want to grow the library in size, period. I support the library in what they do. We have a library. I agree with a lot of the points they're making on not being able to provide enough space and access to certain programs that they're offering in the library. I struggle with this one on is the increase to the personal household justified for the amount of use that our libraries are getting. But on the other side of the equation, it's an asset of the town that we can invest in for the future of the town. So I'm torn on it. We'll have to wait till it comes on to vote. That's my thoughts.
My thoughts are it's something that the town should have the ability to vote on.
Yeah, they will.
No, they will.
Bottom line, it should be up to the majority vote of the town.
And I agree like Jared. This is a tough decision because we're talking about money that the taxpayers are going to come up with after the police department got approved last year, after, we're talking only 2+ years the school came online. And the school was a significant debt, and the police is more than the library. However, we need to also explore that if we don't build this library now, we're not going to build a library. We just won't. Because there's no guarantee we're going to get a state grant at all. And clearly $6 million, I mean, if we had to build a library like this, it won't be $11 million. It'll be 15, it'll be 20, whatever it'll be. So it will not be within our appetite to do, nor should it be. I want to see it come to vote, and I'll be supporting it, though.
I think that, just first of all, just a little perspective on what we're voting on here is, because people get, and I guess rightly, justifiably, overly forward or against it. But, we're talking about a library, we're not talking about a nuclear power plant in our backyard. So, it's a good thing. The library is 2,000 square feet. Yes, we need a bigger library for sure. I have two big concerns with it. Number one, with the addition of schools, the police station, and now a library, that we're incrementally making this town very difficult for a lot of people to still live here. And I'm concerned that as we add these things, it becomes unaffordable. That's part of it. The other part is we worked very hard to balance this budget, operating budget, and to vote to approve the library means we have to cut somewhere else. And there's only so many places in our budget that we can cut, so I think it puts a big strain on the operating budget.
Jeff, just to clarify on what you mean by we have to cut, that's for the increase in operating expenses?
Right, and so, if we do have, and it comes up every year, when we talk about, Jim comes with an estimate, I plugged in as a placeholder 11% for a health insurance increase. Well, guess what, it's 14%, and now we have to cut somewhere else. This is, a minimum of $60,000, in addition to new costs incurred for the police department, that we're going to have to somehow fit into the budget. And I'd prefer not to do it through one-time revenues, free cash, and that kind of thing, so. But, it's a good project, and they worked hard, and they did a good job getting the grant. There's a lot of things that aren't perfect about it. It's big. The number sounds like a big number. They work hard. I'm sure it would be utilized. Whether you want Shaw Farm, that's what we want to use it for. We'll have to think about that. And that's, town meeting will vote, and we'll see. But there's a lot of issues. It's just priorities and how you come down on it.
Yeah, well, I've heard more conversation about this project than anything else. Jim, a question. Police station, is it on budget?
Well, we haven't got the general contractor's bids in yet. Those are due next week, next Thursday, I think. The filed subs, we went out to bid for a couple of them. It's about $300,000 over the estimates. The budget will come in on budget if we have to cut something out of it or whatever we have to do. But so we're on track. It's too preliminary. We have to get the GC bids in and determine where they come in, and then we'll have a better picture of.
So it's an unknown at this point.
To some extent, yeah.
Yeah, and that's my concern. My concern is, what about the citizens of the town? We continually take on projects and say to them, well, this is the way it is, but you can vote. This one here they can vote on, and if they vote with their wallet, so be it. My opinion is, for the taxes that we charge in this town, we don't get that many services. And sooner or later, there's going to be an uprise. And people are going to say, we're just sick and tired of paying taxes. Whether it's a new police station, a new library, I don't know, teachers get 10% raises or whatever it is they give them. Insurance goes up, it all falls back to the taxpayer. And I don't think it's time for this. Even though it's a good project, it's not the time. You want to lead?
No, I don't think there's much more to be said. I think everyone's points are very well taken. This is a vote that the town needs to make, and I really hope that the town people show up to the town meeting, and they show up if we vote to make a formal vote on this with a ballot. However, I need to echo what Jeff said. We have a very high tax burden, and a lot of our residents are struggling with that. So as a finance committee, I think we need to think about it from the cost to our residents' perspective, whilst weighing, the potential for future cost if we were to decide to do a library later. So it's a really tough decision, and I applaud the people that have been so really emotionally and mentally engaged in all of the discussions. We had great presentation tonight, and it's a tough thing to do, to sit in front of people after they've worked so hard. So vote.
So the son of a librarian and a media specialist, and a mother who was 35 years as a library trustee and building the extension to the Millbury Library.
No pressure, Tom.
This has been a very deep conversation that I've had to myself, my wife, and others. So I know the importance of what a library is and what it does for a community, and really this comes down to the trust and confidence that we have in our town's ability to be able to, utilize the resources that we have to make, sacrifices and adjustments. I'm one vote, so, my vote will matter to me and could matter in the final vote. But if this does pass, it will rest on, the school committee and the superintendent to come up with a sound school budget, and the administrator to balance the books, and for us to make those fair judgments. So, it's important for us to know, the total future of our community doesn't just rest on this one vote. But I will say that I just to not have the utilization of that Shaw Farm location, have a building plan that actually will pay for the road in and take care of some of those. In my civilian, my previous life, I saw a lot of military construction projects go through and know what the engineering and designing structures go, and those contingencies are built in to it. So, some of those things that I mentioned, that they're mentioned. It's people have to value and take the trust and confidence of the architectural firm and the designs of some of those things. So this will not be an easy town vote when I vote in the town meeting, but know that just also think about it. We're also comparing 2,100 square feet of what our current present is to what would an average town have had. We've been below average for how many years? So we've had limited kind of resources and capabilities that the library has had. If this was to pass, it would just, would open up, opportunities that the community just hasn't been able to benefit. And that's just something to keep in mind. Thank you.
So welcome to the committee.
Yeah. So, the unfortunate part about this is, the group that did all this work did a tremendous amount of work in applying for the grant. What, to me, kind of gets in the way is that they didn't work close enough with the town administration on the timing. Because I think all of us are kind of looking at the timing, and had that worked a little bit more in concert with the town administrator to understand the timing and just waited a little longer, because I think our job really is to try to flatline this debt impact on taxpayers. So we're looking at, scheduling these projects out so that, as debt's rolling off, we're putting that next project on to lessen the impact on the taxpayers, And unfortunately, the timing of this, with all the great work, we're somewhat handcuffed now with a grant that was put in, which could have, if it just waited a little longer, we probably all would be saying something different. And so.
Yeah, I would say that they didn't have any control over the timing of the grant. That's one thing that the library didn't have control over. So, we can't hold that against them. It's the overall timing in general, I think, that it makes it really. Yeah, so the timing is unfortunate.
Okay, so without additional comments, we're going to vote. The motion is to recommend approval of the library, building the new library. All those in favor, let me make sure I get this one right. In favor of Article 15 to build the new library.
Aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? No.
Nay.
4 to 4.
What's the score?
4 to 4.
Oh, 4. So we didn't make a decision.
That's okay. The town.
That's our recommendation, that's all.
The town's gonna.
I thought we were just voting to approve, to bring it to a vote.
It's already had a
Oh,
vote.
it's going to a vote.
It's a warrant, yeah, so it's going to a vote.
Yeah,
so.
we don't control what goes in, we make a recommendation.
That's all.
Oh, but you weren't just asking us to approve the warrant, you were asking us to vote on whether we think there should be.
Our recommendation.
A recommendation
how
on the
the
warrant.
town should-
Not
yeah.
how you personally would vote for it or not.
That's the public hearing. Public hearing actually closed 41 minutes ago.
Organization.
Election of officers. We have a chair position, a vice chair position, and a clerk position. So we've had...
All right, go ahead, start with the motion.
We have some, anyone, so nominations for those three positions, so. Chair position.
That was you. You're really good at it, so you might as well keep going.
We nominate.
If any,
I nominate Jeff Bannon to remain as chair of the Finance and Warrant Committee for as long as.
Are there other individuals that would like to be nominated or considered besides Tom?
I was voting on you. He seconded it. I was just trying to.
Okay, so I'm not going to vote on that, so all those in favor of whatever she said?
Aye.
I'm so honored. Vice Chair, can we have a nomination for Vice Chair?
No, I had made the nomination through
You sent an email.
To have Pat Morris, who isn't here, to decline the position. So regretfully, I don't know if we can still nominate him, but.
Oh, you can still nominate him.
So to nominate Pat Morris
Okay,
for the role of Vice Chair.
Okay. I'm going to nominate Diane for Vice Chair as well.
Oh,
So,
Pat, can you
I
for
believe
that?
that Pat may have nominated, so I want to make sure that his views are put forth.
Excellent, thank you, Jeff.
So we have a runoff. Now it's a party.
yeah.
And there's 8 of us, so it could
We
be
got-
split. You
we
could
have
have
to-
like 2 vice chairs.
So do you have to second either of those
I
right
think
now?
you just
Or no?
vote
No,
on your person.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of Diane?
Do you want the position? Because I want to vote for someone who wants to do it.
That's
Who
why I
wants the
nominated
position?
Pat. I figured there was a really.
He's not
choice.
here.
I know.
I want to, I'll switch.
You want to switch?
Well, I had nominated her for clerk, so.
We can nominate you for that as well.
Yeah, you can be nominated for clerk.
You guys realize how much volunteer work I do?
Wow, this is good, great pay.
So you're good at it, is what you're saying.
Hey.
You're good at it.
I nominate Pat for vice chair and you for clerk.
So we,
I'll
so we
second
had,
that nomination.
I think we have to vote on the vice chair first.
There's a party.
Okay, all those in favor of Pat for Vice Chair?
Pat?
Pat gets Vice Chair,
Okay, yes.
8-0. Okay, we have a nomination for clerk. I only heard
So
one.
I had nominated Liz.
Okay, and she had nominated you.
To maintain her position of clerk. It's a position that takes a number of years to learn, so in order to get really good at
Quite
it.
frankly, I mean, you have done a good job at that.
And you've done a great job, so why would you
But I had full
have a
confidence in
computer with you
Diane
tonight?
as well.
And you, in turn, nominated
Diane.
Diane.
It's been money passed.
Unless, Susan?
She's too smart for that.
Oh, what are you saying?
You took the job and you didn't know.
Okay.
All right. So I think we could.
Are you
we have-
interested in that position?
No, at this point in time, I'm not interested in the position of clerk. I think that.
It's a fair question to ask Liz as well.
But I think that it looks like we might have to do like an arm wrestle or something, because it's probably gonna be
No,
more.
it's fine. If nobody else is interested, I will be the martyr and continue.
All right.
Oh, bless
All those
you,
in
Liz.
favor of
But I'm going to
Liz?
need help with this one.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay,
All
motion
those
for
in favor?
adjournment.
No, we gotta
We have
vote.
to,
Yeah, we have to.
All those in favor of Liz?
Aye.
Congratulations.
I'm on the lottery.
Okay, we have a town meeting October
16.
16th. I'm not sure exactly what,
16th, 7 PM at the.
7 p.m.
High school, or at the
Okay.
auditorium.
We'll see everyone there. We won't have a meeting before then. I'm going to, because I said I would, take a copy of the page that Jesse,
We might be able to,
Scan it.
pull that off. If Jesse left, I was gonna say he can send us.
We're
the
gonna
link.
scan it just so everyone has it.
Yeah, just scanning it sometimes it's harder to see. So let's see if we can get it from Jesse and distribute it. I'll send a message to Jesse.
Perfect, okay. I have to touch base with you about getting minutes to Laura, because after we vote to approve minutes, they have to go to Laura.
Laura,
Yeah.
so she can put them in the town records.
Yeah.
You mean old minutes?
Oh, yes, so she's got many missing minutes from meetings that she does not have.
Okay.
So every time we have to, they all should be posted, but I think we're having trouble maintaining.
After
the
we-
website
after we
with
approve them.
Up-to-date information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a motion to adjourn on the floor right now. Second, all those in favor, aye, we're adjourned.